Approaching the mansion after a morning of herb gathering, Lady Riafel is greeted by a servant who questions her habitual early morning excursions. Riafel explains that dawn is the only time to harvest quality ingredients, indifferent to the poisonous weeds that plague the rest of the land. As she enters the house, Riafel overhears cruel gossip from the servants who mock her unrefined nature and pity her fiancé, Aaron. Upon entering the room, Riafel finds Lord Aaron waiting for her return, though the atmosphere is thick with a strange, heavy tension. Without hesitation, Aaron delivers a crushing blow by declaring he is breaking off their engagement to make her sister, Rouge, his new fiancée. The shock of the betrayal leaves Riafel speechless as she stares at the man she once trusted. Riafel cries out in disbelief, demanding to know what prompted such a sudden and cruel decision. A flashback reveals Count Aaron Leol, a wealthy pharmacy owner who had proposed to Riafel after witnessing her apothecary talents. Aaron had been mesmerized by Riafel's ability to create powerful medicines entirely on her own. His proposal was direct and insistent, begging Riafel to become his fiancée to secure her expertise for his business. Riafel accepted, realizing that his support and status were the only things keeping her ruined baronial family afloat. Back in the present, Aaron sneers at her, claiming her attitude as a fiancée has been nothing short of strange and cold. He complains that she is a workaholic who neglects him, refusing to even share a bed or keep him company at night. Riafel can only tilt her head in confusion at his accusations, feeling deeply hurt by the way he is twisting her dedication. Aaron continues his petty tirade, lamenting that she hasn't even performed simple tasks like baking him a single cookie. Riafel calmly reminds him that her neglect is actually the labor of managing his entire shop and production. Her days are consumed by gathering ingredients at dawn and spending every morning mixing complex medicines. On top of manual labor, she handles the inventory, payroll, and development of new formulas, yet her sister Rouge still whispers that Riafel is the awful one. Rouge Calasti, Riafel's younger sister, looms in the background as the person who has finally stolen Aaron's heart. Blessed with glamorous looks and charming gestures, Rouge has always been able to captivate those around her with ease. Rouge shamelessly admits she couldn't bear to leave Aaron alone, even baking him the cookies Riafel was too busy to make. Aaron embraces Rouge, praising her for being the only one who can heal his heart while Riafel watches in silent fury. Refusing to be cast aside, Riafel slams her hands down and declares she cannot agree to this mockery of their contract. She demands to know if he truly intends to leave the business to a girl like Rouge who has been pampered and spoiled her entire life. Trembling with rage, Riafel lists the sacrifices she made, working through illness and enduring servant gossip for his sake. Aaron and Rouge look on with feigned confusion, with Rouge even having the audacity to blame Riafel for her own hardships. Aaron mocks her further, claiming he is getting a headache because she is too unrefined to even hold a proper conversation. Seeing the futility of the argument, Riafel finally yields, telling the treacherous pair to be happy together. As Riafel stands alone in the hallway, Rouge taunts her by promising to love Aaron enough for both of them. Riafel realizes she still has a few things of her own to say before she departs this house forever. Aaron dismissively tells her that he hasn't even prepared a carriage for her return, shocked that she is still standing there. Riafel coolly reminds him that since she is no longer his fiancée, there is a certain matter he has forgotten. She reaches for a key, ready to reclaim what is rightfully hers. Riafel warns him that while it is fine to drive her out, he has made a grave mistake regarding the house's assets. Aaron's face pales as he begins to realize the implication of Riafel's sudden departure. Riafel firmly states that she is the sole person responsible for making every drop of medicine in this house. Gesturing to the shelves of valuable products, she emphasizes that she made every single one of them herself. She demands that he stop selling her medicines immediately since the engagement, the basis of their business deal, is over. Aaron scoffs, calling her foolish and claiming there is no way she can actually enforce such a demand. Riafel points out that her personal involvement in production was a legal condition of the medicine's sale. Losing his temper, Aaron lashes out and strikes Riafel across the face. He yells that he has had enough of her defiance, unable to handle the reality of losing his primary source of income. Aaron desperately claims the medicine belongs to his house now, fearing the inevitable customer complaints if sales stop. He screams at Riafel, calling her foolish for trying to use an important customer as a tool for revenge. Riafel clenches her fists and prepares to leave, telling herself not to cry over a man so beneath her. In the background, voices from her past praise Rouge as an adorable angel, further isolating Riafel in her grief. She remembers the harsh words of her family, calling her a failure and demanding she only exist to bring money home. Riafel laments the fact that she was born a girl, knowing life would have been simpler had she been the male heir. She reflects on how she was forced to work her entire life for the sake of a family that never truly loved her. Ultimately, Riafel knows that without her talent and labor, this entire house will inevitably fall apart. Riafel stands accused of interference as her family questions why she would discourage the pharmacist from selling such dangerous medicine. Her parents scold her for being foolish, reminding her that his job involves touching hazardous materials and asking what would happen if the precious Rouge got hurt. Tears stream down Riafel's face as she wonders if it is only unacceptable for Rouge to get dirty, while she herself has endured harassment from unsavory customers. Huddled in despair, she reflects on how every kindness and even the baked goods were reserved for Rouge, while any servant who showed her compassion was forced to quit. Her father looms over her, declaring that she has made a total fool of the family by hurting Lord Aaron and telling him not to sell his medicine. They brand her an unfilial child, expressing disbelief that Lord Aaron would ever choose a woman like her over her sister. Desperate to be heard, Riafel begs them to listen while her father screams for her to shut up, terrified that her blunder will cost the family their financial aid. Her parents callously remark that it is a good thing Aaron chose Rouge instead, telling the distraught Riafel to simply calm down. A horrifying new plan emerges as they suggest Riafel should work as a courtesan to earn money and provide for the family. Her father sneers that as the eldest daughter, she has a duty to support the family through any means necessary. Her mother leans in with a wicked smile, vowing that Riafel will fulfill this role until the day she dies. Overwhelmed by the cruelty, Riafel gasps in shock as the reality of her parents' malice finally sinks in. She hyperventilates and begs them to stop, her world fracturing under the weight of their betrayal. Trapped and terrified, she feels there is no way to run away from the nightmare her life has become. The concept of house and family becomes a suffocating cage that she no longer recognizes. Her father threatens to disown her on the spot, demanding an immediate apology for her supposed disrespect toward her parents. A sudden, chilling clarity washes over Riafel as she realizes that her relationship with these people is beyond repair. She accepts the truth that this house has ceased to be a place where she can ever truly return. Looking up with a newfound resolve, she decides that if being disowned is the price of freedom, she doesn't mind at all. Riafel shocks her parents by shouting for them to feel free to disown her, as she accepts their rejection gladly. Her family reacts with fury, telling her she should starve to death immediately for abandoning the family that gave her no love. She looks at her selfish parents and her spoiled sister, realizing she has finally reached her limit. With a final declaration that she has had enough, she adds her superficial fiancé to the list of people she is leaving behind. Riafel flees the estate in a carriage, shouting a final goodbye to her mother and father as she heads toward an uncertain future. As the carriage rolls away, she reflects on her past and admits that her life up until this point wasn't anything good. Her thoughts turn back to Aaron and the medicine he created, hoping that it will truly heal many people despite her warnings. She remembers how happy she felt when he first acknowledged her, marking the only time in her life she felt seen. She recalls his promises of a future together where he would hire many pharmacists once they were married. His words about preparing for that future and asking her to endure a little longer echo in her mind. She realizes she was only able to survive the pain and hardship of her daily life because she believed in those words. Even when things were tough and it hurt, the hope of a life with him kept her moving forward. The weight of her situation bears down on her as she compares those bright promises to her current pitiful state. She laments that the reality of her life is now nothing but a shadow of the dreams she once held. Riafel weeps as she realizes her years of desperate effort were completely defeated by something as simple as cookies her sister baked. Everything she built and every sacrifice she made feels utterly pointless in the wake of her family's betrayal. She sits alone in the carriage, shielding her eyes as she sobs for the life she is leaving behind. Her crying is interrupted by a sudden realization as something catches her eye outside the window. Gasping in awe, she gazes out at the horizon where a magnificent light breaks through the clouds. She leans out of the carriage window, completely mesmerized by the most beautiful sunset she has ever seen. The carriage driver notes her reaction, remarking that it's rare for someone from this territory to be so surprised by the sight. Riafel admits she didn't know such beauty existed, while the driver explains that this specific sunset is famous even in other lands. Watching the sun dip below the sea, she begins to wonder if there are new herbs or medicines waiting for her beyond the horizon. Fearing her parents might try to drag her back if they run into money trouble, she resolves to go as far away as possible. The warm, overflowing colors of the sky feel like a divine sign cheering her on toward her new life. Riafel wipes her tears and smiles, deciding she can't stay depressed and must move forward with her own strength. She stands tall, having finally chosen a path where she can live for herself and no one else. Elsewhere, a mysterious figure arrives at a destination just before sunset, prepared for a business meeting. A contract is discussed for a new candidate, identifying the target as none other than Count Aaron Leal. The Count is described as a talented territory manager and pharmacy owner known by the nickname, the Herb Count. The mysterious figure reveals that Aaron is the creator of a rumored and highly sought-after dream disinfectant. A striking visual introduces the handsome Count Aaron Leal, an expert territory manager and pharmacy owner renowned as the Herb Count. Aaron expresses a warm smile while stating his sincere anticipation for an upcoming meeting with a new candidate. Riafel's profile is shown as she looks off into the distance, her expression soft and contemplative amidst her newfound freedom. Riafel Calaster begins her morning routine before the first light of dawn, equipping her trusted lantern and a protective talisman for herb gathering. Moving through the damp undergrowth, she identifies valuable specimens of paterella, lily beach, and matrina grass. Riafel beams with joy at the abundance of herbs, noting she must harvest them quickly while the morning dew still clings to their leaves. Deep in the forest home of the herb god, Riafel finishes her harvest and thanks the tree spirits believed to cultivate these gifts for apothecaries. Exhaustion finally begins to set in, prompting Riafel to pack her heavy bags and prepare for the long walk back home. Bowing respectfully to the forest, she offers a final prayer of gratitude to the herb god for providing such a successful haul today. Her thoughts turn somber as she reflects on the moment she believed her life was truly over after being disowned. She recalls the crushing despair of having no home or family to return to, feeling as though everything had slipped through her fingers. Riafel's eye is shown in a tight close-up, shimmering with a mix of past tears and a renewed sense of purpose. Despite the pain, she envisions a new future where her medicines can finally heal others and provide her a true place to belong. She gazes at the shifting colors of the sky, finding comfort in the specific hues of the morning light. Revitalized by the beautiful sunrise, Riafel pumps herself up and vows to pour all her might into making medicine today. A lone horse grazes peacefully in the distance near a quiet settlement, signaling Riafel's arrival at her new sanctuary. The scene shifts to a quaint, multi-story pharmacy building where local villagers have already begun to gather. Concerned mothers and laborers call out to the pharmacy, seeking fever reducers for children and ointment for chapped hands. Riafel greets her customers with a bright smile, asking them to wait just a moment as she organizes her stock. She provides detailed instructions to a patient, explaining exactly how to apply the medicine to the affected area for the best results. Moving with practiced efficiency, she reaches for the specific stomach medicine a villager requested. The local women gossip about the shop, noting how the packaging is both stylish and incredibly adorable. Riafel bids farewell to the village chief, who gratefully reports that his stomach has felt much better since he started her treatment. Maintaining her professional standards, she warns the chief not to rely solely on medicine and to pay closer attention to his daily diet. The village chief looks on with a slightly dazed but happy expression, charmed by the young apothecary's earnest nature. Locals remark that Riafel is a strange apothecary for constantly telling her customers they shouldn't rely on her medicine all the time. Finally taking a lunch break, Riafel sits down to a delicious meal and a cup of tea to recharge her energy. She reflects on the few months that have passed since she fled her family home to start this new life in the village. To her surprise, she took over the entire store after the previous apothecary unexpectedly fled, and the villagers now swear by her amazing skill. Despite her current success, she remains cautious and considers eventually fleeing to the neighboring country to stay out of her parents' reach. To secure her long-term freedom, she realizes she must stay in the village for 1 year to qualify for a new identification card. Riafel balances her time between earning living expenses and expanding her repertoire of medicine recipes to prepare for any future move. Eating a snack, she finds happiness in simple things, viewing them as a substitute for everything her sister Rouge stole from her. Her peaceful break is interrupted when the village chief rushes toward her with a look of pure panic on his face. Riafel jumps up in alarm, terrified that someone has collapsed or that a serious emergency has occurred in the village. The chief delivers the shocking news of a massive explosion near the border where many travelers were caught in the blast. He explains that flammable herbs or gunpowder likely ignited in a carriage bound for the neighboring country. Although rescue soldiers have been requested, the chief fears the damage will spread because they are too far away to arrive quickly. Without a second thought, Riefel declares they should take her supply of medicine and head to the disaster site immediately. She brushes off concerns about her valuable stock, stating she just made a large batch of disinfectant and can always make more. Riefel rushes to get ready, fueled by the conviction that she cannot simply stand by while people are suffering. The village chief watches in awe as she unhesitatingly clears out half her shop's display, despite the immense work required to replace it. Packing the last of her premium painkillers, Riefel proves herself to be a truly splendid and selfless apothecary. As she nears the border gate, the pungent smell of burnt debris grows stronger, forcing her to pick up her pace. Pushing through the final thickets of bushes, Riefel finally reaches the gate where the disaster occurred. The aftermath of the explosion is revealed as a scene of total devastation, with smoke rising from the shattered stone walls. Wounded survivors cry out for help in agony, while a man warns Riefel to stay back because the area is still dangerous. Riefel's legs freeze in terror at the sight of the carnage, her heart hammering as she struggles to overcome her fear. She gasps for air, desperately trying to steady her breathing so she can move forward and do her duty. Riefel finds her voice and calls out to the victims, promising them she is an apothecary and telling them not to push themselves any further. Desperate to help, a girl runs toward a scene of destruction, vowing that she won't stop as she witnesses the devastation. Alsan cries out in despair, declaring that everyone is suffering while he stands amidst the ruins. Clenching his bloodied hands, Alsan laments their uselessness because they lack both finished medicine and the herbs required to craft it. Suddenly, the girl arrives and urgently offers whatever help she can provide to the struggling man. With a look of pure determination, she announces that she has brought the medicine they so desperately need. Dropping a massive bag on the ground, the girl surprises the wounded Alsan, who can only stare and wonder who his mysterious savior is. Alsan gazes up in stunned silence, his eyes reflecting a flicker of hope as he processes the girl's sudden appearance. The girl quickly tries to reassure him that she isn't a suspicious person and has simply traveled from a nearby village to help. Looming nearby, a muscular man named Halbert eyes the girl warily, making her wonder if he is a dangerous bandit. Ignoring the tension, the girl insists that they use the large supply of medicine she brought in her bag. Halbert approaches and tells the girl she doesn't need to be so cautious, though he still questions her identity despite her kind offer. Alsan suddenly realizes the girl's true nature, recognizing her immediately as a fellow apothecary. Inhaling deeply, Alsan notes the distinct scent of medicinal herbs that is steeped into the girl's very being. While the girl apologizes for smelling like medicine, Alsan confirms that the scent is a sure sign of a dedicated apothecary. Riefel smiles brightly and reveals that she is also an apothecary, surprising those around her with her profession. Introducing herself as Riefel, she explains that she is in the country for various reasons and asks to be called Al. Halbert introduces himself in return and apologizes for his earlier suspicion toward the young woman. Being blunt, Halbert asks to see the contents of her bag as Riefel formally introduces herself as an apothecary from a nearby village. They are shocked to see the massive amount of medicine she managed to carry while running to the scene. Riefel confirms the supply is all for them, leading Halbert to ask if they are truly allowed to use all of it. Riefel declares that she brought it for this exact purpose, prompting a grateful Halbert to accept her help. Halbert immediately directs his men to distribute the medicine to all the injured people in the area. Just as they begin to move, Riefel calls out for them to wait. The group stops in confusion, wondering why Riefel is suddenly hesitating. Riefel reaches out to Alsan and firmly tells him that he is the one who needs to be treated first. Alsan looks down in shame, apologizing that it took him so long to receive the medicine despite the suffering around him. Riefel challenges his self-doubt, reminding him that he previously called himself useless despite his efforts. Looking at the rubble, she admits that she was terrified when she first saw the terrible state of the country. She smiles warmly at Alsan, telling him that his desperate words about everyone's suffering were what truly opened her eyes. Riefel takes his bandaged hands, telling him that his desperate desire to help others even without medicine is what matters most. She gazes into his eyes and emphasizes that the compassion he showed is not something just anyone can do. Beaming with a radiant smile, Riefel calls Alsan amazing and thanks him for giving her the courage to act. Al-sen blushes intensely, moved by her words as he realizes how reassuring her arrival has been for him. Holding his hands tightly, Al-sen offers Riefel a heartfelt thank you for everything she has done. Nearby, Halbert barks orders to the other men to help transport the injured to the apothecary's location. As the rescue continues, Riefel tells the injured they don't need to worry anymore while Al-sen mentions he is curious about something. Al-sen questions if washing wounds with plain water might actually be better than using a standard disinfectant. Riefel is momentarily caught off guard by his insightful observation regarding medical treatment. Al-sen explains that standard disinfectants kill good bacteria as well, showing the depth of his diligent study as an apothecary. Riefel excitedly leans in and tells him not to worry because her disinfectant is special and functions differently. She proudly displays a bottle, explaining that its bactericidal effect remains without harming the body's native bacteria. Giving a confident thumbs up, she reassures him that it is perfectly safe to splash as much as they need onto the wounds. Al-sen is stunned by the revelation, wondering if this incredible medicine is really what he thinks it is. He realizes that he had strictly forbidden himself from mixing something so potent, yet here it is circulating normally. Riefel notices his distress and tries to explain that if the medicine is made properly, he should be free to use it as he likes. Sensing his internal conflict, Riefel tells him to ignore the doubt and focus on the rescue efforts since more injured people still need help. They are suddenly interrupted by the sound of Halbert's voice, realizing he should be on guard near the gate. The two apothecaries stop what they are doing and prepare to investigate the sudden commotion. Riefel reminds the local people to watch their step as they move through the wreckage. The scene shifts as Halbert confronts a young punk who is trying to run away, refusing to let the arrogant boy escape. Looking shocked, Riefel gasps in disbelief upon seeing Sir Halbert standing before her. Riefel and her companions stare in wide-eyed horror at the scene unfolding in front of them. A heated argument erupts as a merchant furiously defends his right to do what he wants with his property after his carriage is involved in an accident. The gravity of the situation sinks in as Riefel stares ahead with a cold, sweating expression of dread. Riefel realizes with a start that the man Halbert is disputing with is the owner of the carriage that just exploded. Attempting to de-escalate the tension, someone shouts for both parties to calm down and explain the situation. Halbert aggressively warns the merchant not to touch something while a companion tries to get Halbert to talk things through first. With an authoritative gesture, Halbert demands that everyone look at the evidence he has uncovered. To her surprise, Riefel discovers several jars and questions if they contain medicine. Confusion spreads as characters wonder why there is no medicine available despite the clear need. It is revealed that the merchant had been hiding a second carriage filled with medicine that was piled up out of sight. Distraught, Riefel confronts the merchant for hiding life-saving supplies while so many people are suffering. The merchant selfishly defends his actions, claiming he cannot use the export-only medicine without permission from his trading partners. A companion points out the merchant's hypocrisy, noting that he had no problem using that same medicine to treat his own wounds. Caught in a lie, the merchant pathetically tries to justify his actions by claiming he was also in pain. Silence falls over the group as the weight of the merchant's greed becomes undeniably apparent. Fed up with the excuses, the group decides they won't complain if they simply take the rest of the medicine to help the injured. A companion informs Riefel that the victims may no longer be in immediate need of the merchant's specific medicine. Riefel quickly pivots, asking to be guided to the injured so she can offer her own help. As Riefel prepares to leave, she is called back by someone urging her and the crowd to wait. The speaker asks the crowd to prioritize the medicine brought by the pharmacist over the supplies found in the carriage. It is explained that the request isn't just a personal favor, but a matter of the superior quality of Riefel's medicine. Bowing deeply, the man pleads with the crowd to understand that Riefel went out of her way to provide high-quality aid. Riefel watches in stunned silence as Mr. Al continues to advocate for her skills. The merchant erupts in a furious, spittle-flecked rage, insulted by the suggestion that his goods are inferior. Screaming and grabbing Halbert's collar, the merchant threatens to sue for business interference and mocks the idea of a little girl's medicine being better than his. As guards arrive to handle the merchant, Al turns to Riefel and apologizes for making the suggestion without her consent. Riefel reaches out a comforting hand, telling Al-san that there is absolutely no need for him to apologize. She brightly explains that using her medicine is actually a relief because it means she has less heavy luggage to carry back home. Her expression softens as she prepares to share an even more important reason for her happiness. Gazing at a bottle of her own concoction, Riafel expresses how proud she is to have her work recognized by another pharmacist. Overflowing with joy, Riafel laughs and thanks Alsan for needing her medicine while he blushes in humble embarrassment. The moment is interrupted by a rustling in the bushes as someone asks if Riafel is nearby. A group of men emerges from the foliage, calling out to Riafel-san with relief. Riafel is taken aback, her eyes widening as she realizes who has just arrived. She asks the group in confusion why they are all there at the scene of the accident. The men boast that they couldn't leave everything to Riafel, as it would be a blow to their manhood to let her do all the work. One of the men jokingly calls another an idiot, claiming that a true hero is always the one who arrives late to the rescue. They offer a charming smile and vow to lend her as much help as they possibly can. They emphasize that they want to help her just as she has helped them in the past. With determined looks, the group insists on repaying their debt to her right now. Empowered by their support, Riafel declares that together they are worth 100 men and can help every single person. Halbert and his companions stand tall, ready to get to work alongside the newly arrived reinforcements. A soldier salutes Riafel, thanking her for the prompt rescue that prevented the damage from spreading while the greedy merchant looks on in disbelief. Riafel smiles broadly, noting that she wasn't the only one who contributed to the rescue effort. She looks around the area, realizing that the people she was just with a moment ago have suddenly vanished. In the spot where Halbert and Al were standing, there is now nothing but an empty space beneath a large tree. A voice calls out from a distance, offering to send a carriage if it would be helpful. Riafel stands alone with a melancholic expression, saddened that she didn't get the chance to say goodbye to her mysterious helpers. The sun sets over a peaceful village with a windmill, marking the end of a long and chaotic day. The villagers gather in a joyful celebration, surrounding Riafel with cheers and praise for her incredible actions during the recent disaster. Standing amidst the floral frame of the village square, Riafel glows with happiness as she is hailed for her bravery. Local residents swarm the young pharmacist, lifting her spirits by calling her amazing for rushing headlong into the danger of the explosion. The crowd marvels at her selflessness, whispering that her courage in such a terrible situation is truly impressive. One onlooker watches intently, wondering if this remarkable child could be the fabled pharmacist's mirror, spoken of in legend. Riafelsen finds herself overwhelmed by the sudden influx of adoration and the weight of being called amazing by everyone she meets. The celebration is interrupted when Riafel is informed that a guest from outside the village has arrived specifically to see her. Confused by the sudden news, she wonders if the mysterious visitor could be someone sent from her parents' house. Description of the travelers reaches her ears, mentioning a tall, skinny man accompanied by a larger, bandit-like figure. Riafel breaks away from the crowd and sprints through the village streets to reach her shop as quickly as possible. She bursts through the front door with a sudden impact, her face flushed with the exertion of the run. To her surprise, she finds a familiar face waiting inside, signaling that the landlord has finally returned. Halbert greets the young lady with a smirk and a casual apology for the sudden intrusion into her shop. Recognition strikes Riafel instantly as she shouts Halbert's name with a mixture of shock and delight. The two share a brief, silent moment of reunion after being apart for what feels like a significant amount of time. Halbert admits he began cleaning the shop out of pure boredom while waiting for her return, highlighting his peculiar habits. He explains that a clean room refreshes his mind and that tidying up is actually one of his favorite hobbies. While Halbert cleans, a second man named Al is found hunched over the counter, obsessing over the formulation and flavor of Riafel's medicines. Riafel observes Al's incredible concentration, realizing he is a person deeply and rarely passionate about the art of medicine. Halbert snaps Al out of his trance, loudly announcing the young lady's arrival and scolding him for being so distracted. Al quickly apologizes for his usual habit of getting lost in research and offers Riafel a warm welcome back. Riafel beams at the pair, expressing her genuine happiness at seeing both of them again after their travels. Curiosity takes over as she asks the men exactly how they managed to locate her hidden store in this remote village. Halbert explains the simple logic of their search, noting they followed the direction the girl was seen running from. He confirms his success with a bingo, after asking the village chief for the location of any local, high-quality pharmacists. Al adds his own praise, stating that all of Riafel's medicines are truly amazing and far beyond standard expectations. He reveals his specialized talent, claiming he could immediately tell her products were superior just by smelling the merchant's stock. Riafel remembers that even during their first meeting, Al had displayed this uncanny ability to identify a pharmacist by scent alone. With a sparkling smile, Al makes a shocking declaration that he has come to purchase every single medication in her store. The idea of one pharmacist buying out another's entire inventory strikes Riefel as incredibly strange and unusual. Though she views Al as a more skilled pharmacist than herself, Riefel admits there is no rule prohibiting such a massive purchase. She remains hesitant, finding the entire proposal logically baffling despite his insistence that her work is excellent. Riefel presses him for a real explanation, unable to understand why he would want her medicines so desperately. Al enthusiastically reveals his true identity as a drug collector who gathers medicines from across the globe. He explains that he buys these medicines to analyze their ingredients and find inspiration for developing his own new drugs. Getting lost in a blissful daze, Al confesses that being surrounded by the scent of medicine is his ultimate form of happiness. Halbert apologizes for his partner's eccentricity, noting that Al is the #1 drug obsessive in their group. Riefel stares at them in bewilderment, the term collector echoing in her mind as she tries to process their strange behavior. The atmosphere shifts to a more serious tone as the prestigious Askran Pharmacists Association is brought into the conversation. They are revealed to be part of an elite group commonly referred to by the intimidating title of the Collector of Snakes. Riefel's eyes widen as she realizes these men hail from the legendary Askran Kingdom, a paradise located far across the sea. She recalls that Askran is a vibrant nation where the pinnacle of global culture, economy, and military power is concentrated. Al confirms his membership in the Snake Collector and explains that his official business has brought him to this specific country. Riefel finds his dedication cool, but Al humbly brushes off the praise despite his prestigious nickname as the Prince of Pharmacy. Halbert clarifies his own role, explaining that he isn't a pharmacist but rather Al's uncle acting as a protective escort. Al expands on their mission, noting that the Snake Collector recruits the best pharmacists from many different countries. He reveals the primary reason for his visit is an official meeting with the esteemed Count Aaron of Lille. Word has reached the association that the medicines developed by the Count's personal pharmacist are exceptionally effective. These achievements have become so famous that they have been passed down across borders, catching the attention of international experts. Because of this success, the pharmacist has become the prime candidate for a new membership in their exclusive global association. Caught in a pensive moment, Al reflects on the weight of a secret identity that remains unproven to the world. Noticing his distressed expression, Lady Riefel approaches with concern to ask why he looks so unwell. Brushing off her worry with a gentle but strained smile, Al insists that nothing is wrong while internally grappling with his hidden past. He laments his inability to reveal himself as the well-known person she speaks of, feeling the frustration of a truth he cannot voice. The scene shifts to the quiet solitude of the pharmacy rooftop as Al contemplates the lack of evidence to support his true origins. Preparing for their departure, Al thanks the young lady for her hospitality while acknowledging that it is finally time to part ways. With a soft look in his eyes, Al expresses his genuine gratitude for the chance to meet someone as kind as Lady Riefel. Making a solemn vow, he promises to stay healthy and return one day to repay the kindness she has shown him. A close-up captures a fleeting, emotional expression on his face as he prepares to step back into his complicated life. Radiant with happiness, Riefel waves goodbye and cheers that she is looking forward to seeing him again. As the wind whistles through the trees, a sudden sense of unease washes over Riefel, making the peaceful atmosphere feel strange. She winces and shields her eyes as a sudden gust of wind and leaves swirls around her, signaling a shift in the air. Standing alone outside the pharmacy, she remembers that Lord Aaron has entrusted her with the entire management of the shop. As night falls over the grand estate, Riefel gazes at the dark windows and wonders what Lord Aaron is doing at this very moment. Inside a lavishly decorated room, several noblemen sit in tense silence, their faces shadowed by a grim atmosphere. A sharp close-up on a man with a monocle highlights his intense, calculating gaze as he prepares to speak. Count Aaron stands before the group, his presence commanding as he addresses the urgent matter at hand. Desperation etched into his features, Count Notray falls to his knees and begs the men to save the life of his wife, Katerina. Sitting with joined hands, the nobleman listens coldly as the Count prepares to recount the tragic events. The Count recalls how his wife used to spend her days happily gardening and hosting elegant tea parties for the ladies of the court. He describes the horrifying moment during a recent tea party when the peaceful gathering was shattered by a sudden incident. Chaos erupted as a maid was seized, screaming her innocence while the guests realized the tarts had been laced with poison. Even now, the victims continue to suffer from agonizing symptoms, yet a thorough search of the mansion revealed no trace of the toxin. The Count mourns the fact that his wife's condition worsens daily, just like the flowers she once tended that are now withering away. Rising from his seat, Not-Ray pleads with the man known for handling the finest medicines to create a life-saving antidote regardless of the cost. He bows his head in a final, desperate act of supplication, begging for his wife to be spared from a slow and painful death. The apothecary remains hesitant, stating that he cannot act blindly without identifying the specific poison used. He questions the Count's expectations, noting that deducing a toxin from symptoms alone is a difficult task even for the most skilled professionals. Internally, the apothecary sneers at the Count's lecture, finding it absurd that a man in such a desperate position would dare to talk big. He privately mocks the Count's willingness to pay any price and insults his taste in women, calling his wife a plump and unremarkable person. Continuing his cruel internal monologue, he ridicules the idea of a noblewoman spending her time digging in the dirt like a common laborer. A flashback shows a young woman happily gardening, her spirit bright despite being covered in soil. The apothecary realizes that Riafel was always covered in dirt as well, sparking a connection in his mind about the nature of plants. A vision of Riafel holding a bottle appears, her smile a stark contrast to the cold calculation currently in the room. She once taught him that poison and medicine are merely two sides of the same coin, where a harmless substance can become deadly with the right catalyst. The man in the monocle remains silent, his expression unreadable as he processes the Count's desperate plea. He sighs and prepares to leave, feeling that the trip was a waste and that even the herbalist Count cannot provide a solution. As he turns to depart, the nobleman suddenly calls out for him to wait, halting his exit with a sharp command. Turning back with a renewed sense of confidence, the apothecary announces that he will take on the difficult matter after all. The Count is startled by the sudden change of heart, wondering if it is truly possible to identify the poison through symptoms alone. He reassures Not-Ray that his finest team can uncover the truth and produce a cure if given the chance. He asks the Count to place absolute trust in his expertise and the capabilities of his pharmacy staff. Relieved by the apothecary's conviction, Count Not-Ray agrees to put his faith in them to save his dying wife. The nobleman bows with a practiced grace, promising that he will not betray the heavy expectations placed upon him. Behind his polite mask, he gloats about the opportunity to make a powerful Count owe him a massive debt of gratitude. He brings up the matter of the reward, reminding the Count of his earlier promise to pay whatever it takes for the antidote. Not-Ray dismisses any need for negotiation, declaring that he would give up his gold, his manor, and his lands to see his wife safe. A sinister smirk spreads across the apothecary's face as he realizes he has one very specific thing in mind for his payment. He produces a sealed letter, claiming it contains the list of ingredients used in the poison tarts. After reviewing the list, he notes that none of the ingredients should normally cause poisoning, deepening the mystery of the catalyst. Lord Aaron ponders a lingering doubt while staring into the distance, his sharp features framed by the dramatic motion lines of his deep contemplation. The narrative shifts to a philosophical reflection on the dual nature of substances, noting how poison and medicine are often merely two sides of the same coin. An unseen speaker explains that while rare, harmless food can undergo a chemical transformation into a toxic compound when combined with specific elements. A close-up reveals a young woman with a gentle, knowing smile as she prepares to demonstrate a pharmaceutical phenomenon. Holding a tiny fruit known as a medjool, she explains that this sweet delicacy can develop dangerous toxins if soaked in alcohol for just 2 days. She notes that while the chance of this toxic reaction is extremely low, the exact variables regarding fruit ripeness or alcohol type remain a mystery. Shifting to the inverse, she presents an ointment made from a caustic plant root that sears flesh unless mixed with a specific neutralizing herb to become a healing salve. Lord Aaron shudders in realization as he discovers the medicine that healed the rash on his arm was actually derived from a lethal poison. Despite his shock, he reluctantly admits the effectiveness of the treatment while acknowledging the inherent terror of knowing a cure's poisonous origins. The apothecary emphasizes the weight of their profession, stating they must constantly study to avoid misusing the knowledge that allows them to decide matters of life and death. A sudden knock-knock interrupts the heavy atmosphere as Aaron looks toward the door with a sharp, expectant glance. A frantic assistant bursts into the lavish room without permission, breathlessly calling out to Aaron as he rushes toward the desk. Clasping several documents to his chest, The assistant excitedly declares that Lord Aaron's previous deductions were absolutely correct. The scene transitions to the evidence gathered regarding the recent poisoning incident. Visual evidence shows a fruit tart, which the assistant confirms contained fruit jelly that had been soaked in alcohol. The duo concludes that the symptoms displayed by the afflicted ladies match the specific mature fruit toxin perfectly, confirming the alcohol-soaked jelly as the culprit. Aaron recalls investigating the tart maker, a man known for his love of liquor and specifically for his habit of consuming fruits soaked in alcohol. Aaron takes pride in his expertise as an employer, demanding to know how long it will take to finalize the necessary countermeasures. Upon hearing that the ingredients are easy to obtain, a satisfied Aaron commands his assistant to get started at once. A shadowy profile of Aaron's face suggests a darker, more calculating side to his personality hidden beneath his noble facade. A beautiful young woman named Rouge reacts with sparkling, wide-eyed adoration to a lavish gift. Overjoyed and surrounded by decorative hearts, Rouge asks if the stunning, ornate necklace is truly meant for her. Aaron graciously confirms the gift, placing the jewelry around Rouge's neck as she hums a happy tune. Rouge reveals she has coveted the piece ever since she first saw it displayed at Lady Katarina's mansion. Embracing Aaron with a kiss, she dreams of the happy thoughts she will have while gazing upon the massive sapphire. Her curiosity piqued, Rouge asks how Aaron managed to acquire such a prized family treasure from Lady Katarina. Aaron explains that the Countess was stricken with a rare poison, and he received the necklace from Count Notray as payment for his great effort in crafting the antidote. He mocks Lady Katarina's attachment to the rock, while she suffered, callously referring to the noblewoman as an old hag. Gazing at Rouge with a smug smile, Aaron reflects on how easily the Countess surrendered her most treasured possession. Flashbacks show a distraught Count Notray, who believed the necklace was a small price to pay to save his wife and the other poison ladies. Aaron privately sneers at the Count's hypocrisy and disgust, believing that fine ornaments only have worth when worn by a beautiful woman like Rouge. He feels a sense of bliss, convinced the necklace itself is rejoicing to be worn by someone as lovely as his companion. A sinister close-up of Aaron's eye reveals his growing arrogance and the cold calculation behind his successful schemes. Aaron revels in his newfound favor with the nobility, noting that the recovered patients and Rouge's increased devotion have perfectly set the stage for his ultimate goal. He eagerly anticipates the following day, which marks the arrival of the legendary Prince of Pharmacology at his shop. He is certain he will be invited to join the Gathering of Serpents, the most prestigious apothecary society in the world. The thought of his name spreading further as the Herb Count fills him with a manic, ambitious energy. Visions of wealth, fame, status, and a brilliant future with his adorable wife dance in his head as he basks in his imagined glory. The piece is shattered by a frantic dash and a series of loud thuds as someone slams through the manor doors. A messenger from the Notray estate barging in without knocking sends Aaron into a fit of rage over the lack of decorum. The messenger delivers catastrophic news, stating that the Countess's condition has suddenly and violently worsened after taking the antidote. Aaron stands frozen in shock, unable to comprehend why she is failing when all the other ladies have successfully recovered. In a moment of panicked desperation, Aaron wonders if the medicine affects humans differently than livestock, cruelly comparing the Countess to a pig. As Aaron frantically suggests calling a veterinarian, Rouge peers from behind a pillar, callously remarking how happy she is that the old hag might die. The assistant looks on in horror at the scene while Rouge continues to admire her new necklace, completely indifferent to the unfolding medical disaster. Another interruption occurs as a letter arrives, though the assistant clarifies with dread that it is not the expected invitation from the Prince of Pharmacology. Aaron clicks his tongue in annoyance, demanding to know what further trouble could possibly be contained in the message. Aaron's eyes widen in absolute terror as he scans the sloppy, handwritten contents of the letter. The message abruptly cancels the planned royal visit, shattering Aaron's dreams of joining the elite apothecary society. Aghast and trembling, Aaron screams in denial, insisting that his shop is the finest apothecary in the entire kingdom. Clenching a document in disbelief, a young nobleman's world shatters as he reads a scathing message declaring that his shop and medicines can no longer be trusted. Shocked by the accusation, he stares at the letter in his trembling hands, unable to fathom how his reputation for quality has crumbled so suddenly. He reflects on the fact that these supplies were supposed to be the premium medicines crafted by Riafel herself. High above a bustling cityscape, white doves take flight past a man in scholarly robes who sits quietly engrossed in a massive tome. A companion reaches out to offer a simple loaf of bread to the studious Lord Halbert, who remains focused on his reading amidst the swirling birds. With a gentle apology for the delay, the duo prepares to share a meal together in the open air. Sitting together on a ledge, the two men begin to eat while a pair of cheerful villagers pass by in the foreground. Lord Halbert takes a bite of his sandwich with a content expression, looking far removed from the stress of the noble capital. The scene focuses on the simple pleasure of the meal, emphasizing the fresh ingredients of the sandwich they are sharing. While eating, his companion mentions the shocking rumor that the famed Herb Count's medicine has actually turned out to be complete garbage. Halbert looks up sharply, clarifying if the man is referring specifically to the medicines produced by Count Leol. The man confirms that the entire town is complaining about Leol's ointments and stomach medicines being completely ineffective. He dismisses the Herb Count as a hollow title, noting that even the disinfectant causes such searing pain that it is totally unusable. A passing elderly woman reminisces sadly about how the Count's medicines used to be genuinely good and affordable for commoners just a short while ago. She wonders aloud how things could have declined so far when his remedies had saved so many people in the past. Another traveler laments that they crossed the entire sea for these legendary cures, only to find the trip was a total waste of time. Listening to the growing list of complaints, Halbert remains silent as he processes the implications of the Count's failure. He looks toward his companion and asks if he truly believes the rumors are as bad as everyone says. Memories of his past life and the people he knew flash through his mind, contrasting his old world with his new surroundings. He gazes out at the horizon, reflecting on how much his perspective has shifted since coming to this country. Rejuvenated by his thoughts, he stands up and prompts Lord Halbert that it is time for them to move on. He decides that it is still far too soon for him to consider returning to his homeland. Meanwhile, in a peaceful forest, the young pharmacist Riafel smiles brightly as she continues her work with the local plants. She kindly instructs the village girls on how to properly prepare bitter fruit by soaking it in water for days to make it delicious. The girls gather around her eagerly, holding up various plants and asking Lady Riafel for her expert opinion on what is edible. Riafel examines a small sprig of berries with an intense, professional focus. She looks over the overflowing baskets of herbs and flowers, noticing something peculiar about the local flora. When the girls ask what is wrong, Riafel admits she feels as though the number of medicinal herbs in the area has significantly increased recently. She observes that the herbs are growing much more densely than when she first moved to the village, though she wonders if it is just her imagination. She recalls how she picked a massive amount of herbs every day to replenish the village's supply following a recent explosion accident. Despite her heavy harvesting, a vast number of herbs grew back in just a few days, displaying an unthinkable reproductive power. While the bounty is good news for a pharmacist, Riafel finds the unnatural growth rate to be slightly frightening. A village girl agrees, noting that this forest never used to have many herbs or fruiting trees before Riafel's arrival. The girl admits she thought it was strange when she first heard Riafel was finding so many medicinal plants in such a barren woods. They stare at Riafel in awe, wondering if the herbs started flourishing specifically because she moved to the area. Riafel frantically waves her hands, laughing off the idea that she possesses such an amazing or mystical power. She suggests instead that perhaps the spirits of the trees are simply in a good mood and have decided to let the forest thrive. Back at her desk, Riafel's casual snacking is interrupted when she discovers a newspaper article regarding the explosion accident. The report reveals the cause was a cargo inspection failure, though the merchant in charge is busy shifting the blame onto his subordinates. To her horror, she reads that the ruined cargo consisted of medical supplies from Lord Aaron Leol's store. She realizes that the loss of such a massive amount of medicine must be a devastating financial blow to the Count. Further headlines catch her eye, detailing a tea party tragedy where many people were poisoned by a tainted tart. Riafel gasps in shock as she reads that the wife of Count Notray was among the victims. She remembers the woman fondly as Lord Aaron's favorite customer, who always greeted Riafel with kindness during her visits to the mansion. The woman had once praised Riafel's effective medicines and even warmly invited the diligent pharmacist to join her for tea. Riafel worries for her old home, though she tries to reassure herself that Aaron's shop still has the superior recipes she left behind. Her brooding is interrupted by a cheerful delivery boy arriving at her door with a stylish letter. She admires the elegant stationery and turns the envelope over to see who could have sent such a formal message. Her eyes light up with joy when she realizes the letter is actually from her friend Al. She beams with relief, overjoyed to finally hear that Al's hand injury has completely healed. Lady Riefel is stunned to receive an official invitation to the gathering of snakes as a token of gratitude for her recent assistance. Riefel realizes this is an invite from the world's most prestigious apothecary association, where only the most elite pharmacists gather. Despite the prestige, she hesitates, feeling that an ordinary girl like herself would be completely out of place among such masters. Her anxiety quickly turns to professional curiosity as she imagines the rare medicines and herbs she might discover there. Overcoming her doubt, Riefel resolves to attend the event. The young apothecary is filled with excitement as she prepares for her very first formal party. Busy with preparations, she gathers supplies while the village residents look on with supportive interest. A mysterious figure arrives at the outskirts of the area, treading heavily upon the stone path. The visitor reflects on how long it has been since he last set foot in this particular location. He scans the area, confidently looking for the young lady's shop to begin his errand. The visitor, revealed to be Halbert, makes his presence known. Riefel appears, looking elegantly transformed in a formal dress, much to the surprise of those present. Halbert is momentarily speechless at her appearance, while Riefel warmly greets him and mentions her happiness over the invitation. Stunned by her beauty, Halbert confirms he is looking for Lady Riefel, who politely introduces herself. Halbert admits he expected her to be in her usual clothes and regrets not sending Al to escort her personally. Behind the scenes, the village women celebrate their success, having used their full power to polish Riefel up because meeting a gentleman in everyday clothes is unacceptable. As they begin to walk, Riefel asks if Al is with them, only to learn he is busy with party preparations. Riefel realizes the invitation didn't specify a venue and asks Halbert where exactly they are going. Halbert suddenly draws his sword, causing Riefel to panic in confusion. He reassures her that he isn't going to cut her down, but is simply opening the entrance. With a swift motion, Halbert directs her attention to the space he has just manipulated. Riefel watches in awe as the air itself begins to ripple and change before her eyes. She is shocked to see space literally opening up in a place where there was previously nothing. Halbert explains that the destination lies beyond this rift, a different space accessible only to members of the gathering of snakes or those with special means. He reveals that the first president of the association created this secret paradise through a contract with a spirit. They step through the portal to reveal a magnificent, sprawling castle bathed in light. The grounds feature beautiful fountains and intricate stonework, showcasing the association's immense wealth and power. While Halbert laughs at her predictable reaction, Riefel is completely overwhelmed by the ridiculous scale of the place. Halbert notices someone approaching and alerts Riefel that they have arrived. A voice calls out to Riefel with great enthusiasm. Riefel's face lights up with joy as she recognizes Al. Al rushes forward to welcome her, his excitement clear as he shouts that they have been waiting. In his haste, Al trips and faceplants spectacularly right in front of the pair. A worried Riefel rushes to his side to check if he is okay after the heavy fall. Al ignores his injury to gush about how happy he is to see her again, though he is quickly scolded that this is no time for rejoicing. Halbert sighs at the chaotic reunion while Al explains he simply couldn't stay still once he knew Riefel was coming. Riefel is amazed when a first aid kit is produced instantly from the different space, a habit Al kept since a past explosion accident. Taking charge of the situation, Riefel prepares to treat Al's injuries using the supplies provided. She gently tends to Al, reflecting the deep bond and history of care between the two. Al looks on fondly, remarking that Lady Riefel is always the one helping him. Riefel smiles as she applies a bandage, noting that their very first meeting involved her treating his hand in a similar way. She playfully chides him, stating that a pharmacist shouldn't always be the one getting injured. Riefel notices the medicine Al used and learns it was actually purchased from her own shop. Al becomes incredibly high energy, praising her ointment for healing severe wounds faster and without leaving any scars. Riefel is caught off guard when Al mentions reports regarding the effectiveness of her medicine. Al explains that he personally followed up with the people treated during the accident to track their progress. He admits he wanted to investigate the results thoroughly, even if it seemed like a cold experiment. Halbert holds up a stack of papers, revealing that every single letter is filled with words of gratitude for Riefel. The letters contain heartfelt thanks from those whose lives were saved by her pharmaceutical skill. The outpouring of thanks continues, confirming that Riefel is truly considered a divine lifesaver by those she helped. Looking at her medicine, Riafel smiles softly while reflecting on how truly glad she is to have helped so many people. Standing before a grand, sunlit manor, Al suggests they head to the venue soon and promises to hand over certain letters later. Riafel and her companions walk toward the entrance of the sprawling estate, surrounded by lush greenery and sparkling light. While approaching the party, Riafel nervously asks Al to confirm that Count Leol won't be participating in today's event. Al explains the situation regarding Aaron Leol, while Riafel internally resolves that she must avoid meeting him at all costs. Riafel reacts with shock as Al reveals that the Gathering of Snakes has officially withdrawn the Count's invitation. Al explains that the Count's medicine has recently gained a reputation for extremely poor quality. He lists troubling examples like ineffective fever reducers and eye drops that cause dryness, leaving Riafel stunned by the news. Riafel stares in disbelief as she learns that even the dream disinfectant, once known for excellent effects, now causes persistent pain. Al firmly states that a dangerous person like the Count cannot be added as a member of their organization. He emphasizes that the first principle of the Gathering of Snakes is to save people, a standard the Count has clearly failed. Riafel is deeply confused because the recipes Lord Aaron is using are the very ones she originally created. Shifting the mood, Al turns to Riafel and compliments her, noting that she looks different today. Riafel blushes and modestly demurs, claiming the attention is more than she deserves. Al continues his praise, telling her that her dress and hairstyle are both very beautiful. With a gentle smile and a slight blush, Al warmly reassures Riafel that her current look suits her perfectly. Overwhelmed by the sincere compliment, Riafel shyly offers her thanks while her heart flutters. Halbert joins the conversation, admitting the situation with Count Leol was surprising and unfortunate. With a confident smirk, Halbert hints that there was also an unexpected gain from the recent commotion. Al laughs and explains that when he showed Riafel's medicine to the Gathering of Serpents, they immediately demanded to meet the apothecary who made it. Riafel is visibly panicked as Halbert warns her to be prepared for the extraordinary eccentrics within the Gathering of Snakes. Al reassures the nervous Riafel, promising that both he and Halbert will be right by her side today. Placing a hand on the door, Al encourages the young lady to enjoy herself and to keep her head held high. With a grand gesture, Al and Halbert lead Riafel into the party of the Gathering of Snakes. Riafel gazes at the magnificent scene before her, her hair adorned with small white flowers catching the light. Stepping through the doors, Riafel's eyes go wide as she is greeted by the dazzling splendor of the ballroom. The sheer brilliance of the decorations reflects in Riafel's shimmering eyes as she takes in the opulent surroundings. A booming voice welcomes the guests to the party of the Gathering of Serpents, as Riafel stands at the top of the stairs. The room is filled with extravagant sights, from massive sparkling chandeliers to platters of perfectly roasted meat. Riafel gulps nervously, thinking to herself that the Global Pharmacists Association is truly terrifying. She reminds herself that the people gathered here are pharmacists possessing the highest level of skill in the world. Al notes that while they are eccentrics, these first-class pharmacists have always devoted themselves to helping people. Al encourages Riafel to enjoy herself without restraint, prompting an enthusiastic response from her. Riafel turns bright red and looks away, her embarrassment clear as Al watches her with a curious expression. The festive atmosphere of the party continues around them, marked by sparkling lights and high spirits. Noticing her nerves, Al kindly suggests they get some food first since she must be exhausted from all the unfamiliarity. Riafel takes a bite of the food, her expression quickly shifting to one of pure culinary delight. She is amazed by the delicious meat, describing it as incredibly tender, juicy, and perfectly paired with its rich sauce. Riafel continues her feast, enjoying the fresh, crisp salad and a soup filled with the aroma of seafood. Looking like a happy Harapico, Riafel's face lights up as both Al and Halbert call out to her. Al and Halbert enthusiastically present more dishes, insisting that both the main course and the sweets are exquisite. As the trio enjoys their meal, a mysterious figure approaches and apologizes for interrupting their conversation. A tall, striking man in sunglasses greets them, noting that it has been a long time since he last saw Lord Alex. Al reacts with surprise, identifying the newcomer as Lady Photosia. The man thanks Photosia for coming all the way from the snowy northern lands to attend the gathering. Riafel looks on curiously, wondering if this person is another acquaintance of Lord Alex. Behind dark sunglasses, the mysterious guest fixes a sharp, discerning gaze on the young apothecary. Riafel feels the intensity of the stare and begins to sweat, maintaining a polite but nervous smile. Futoshia remarks on Riafel's charm and asks if this lovely young lady is the one they've heard about. Al gestures toward Riafel and proudly confirms her identity to the guest. Rifle introduces herself with a graceful bow, radiating a polished and refined aura that immediately captures the room's attention. A mysterious man wearing sunglasses watches alongside a companion, his curiosity piqued by the newcomer's presence. The man in sunglasses enthusiastically greets Rifle, declaring that his long journey from the snow country was well worth it just to meet her. Rifle looks on in confusion as the man expresses his deep honor and reveals he has long heard rumors about her skills. He leans in with excitement, stating his eager anticipation to witness her renowned medicine-making techniques in person. Around the room, various skilled individuals engage in the delicate art of brewing, filling the air with mystical vapors and glowing concoctions. Amidst the bustling activity, Rifle turns to Lord Al to ask for clarification on the true nature of this gathering. Al explains that this party serves as a vital hub for pharmacists to share and refine knowledge gathered from different lands. He emphasizes that pharmacology is an ever-evolving field where professionals must constantly adapt to daily advances. While it sounds noble to call it improving skills, Al secretly admits it is also a strategic way to scout the competition. The man in sunglasses notes that despite their shared ideals as allies, every pharmacist harbors an underlying competitive drive. He asserts that their ultimate root desire is simply to create the best medicine possible, no matter the methods used. Moving past the philosophy, the group prepares to transition into a practical demonstration of their medicinal craft. The man turns his sharp gaze toward Rifle, calling her a most promising young lady and challenging her to show off her skills. Rifle begins her demonstration by crushing a trumpet-shaped flower called lilivich, a staple ingredient for cold medicine. She meticulously adds water a little at a time to create a paste, noting how much she enjoys the refreshing citrus-like aroma that rises. After careful grinding, the mixture reaches a perfect consistency, signaling that the base of the remedy is ready. The observers are impressed by her solid grasp of the basics, complimenting her skillful handling of the equipment. Rifle addresses Mr. Halpert, mentioning that the only step remaining is the addition of matrina grass. To everyone's surprise, she asks for fire, suggesting there should be a fire magic stone available in the kitchen. A tray holding a glowing fire magic stone is presented to her, providing the heat source she requires. Rifle thanks them for the help and prepares to introduce the matrina grass into the intense heat. The onlookers gape in absolute shock as Rifle does the unthinkable and tosses the herbs directly into the flames. Panic erupts as the man in sunglasses screams, demanding to know why she would burn the grass when it is normally added as is. Rifle remains calm amidst the chaos, holding her ground as the experts stare at the charred remains in disbelief. She explains that at her shop, roasting matrina grass before boiling it is a secret technique that significantly increases the medicine's potency. A woman named Futoshia uses her special eyes to analyze the concoction, confirming that the effect has indeed strengthened. Futoshia realizes that the carbonization process altered the components in a way that made the medicine more active. The surrounding pharmacists are floored by the discovery, crowding around Rifle to beg for a look at her other unique formulations. The man in sunglasses marvels at the innovation, asking Rifle if she struggled greatly before discovering such a revolutionary method. Rifle bashfully admits that the discovery wasn't the result of deep struggle, but rather a simple whim she tried by chance. The experts are left stunned by the idea that a whim could lead to such a sophisticated breakthrough in pharmacology. Pushing further, they ask if she gathers her own herbs or relies on traders for her supplies. Rifle explains that she picks them from a forest near her village, which is incredibly abundant in medicinal plants. She mentions that the forest wasn't always so lush, but things seemed to change for the better right before she moved there. One of the pharmacists muses that perhaps the forest spirits revived the land specifically for Rifle's sake. Rifle recalls that the village wives had told her something very similar regarding the sudden revival of the woods. She smiles warmly, stating that if the legends were true, she would be immensely grateful for the chance to make more medicine. As Rifle enjoys the praise, a small chibi version of the sunglasses man dances around, celebrating the brilliant tune of her talent. Excited by her potential, the group encourages Rifle to stay and demonstrate a burn medicine next using the remaining herbs. Lord Al watches from the side, deeply impressed by how Rifle managed to establish such a high-level shop in a remote village. Despite the success, a shadow of doubt lingers as some wonder if such skill could truly be attributed to mere whim. The man in sunglasses narrows his eyes, his playful demeanor shifting as he contemplates the true depth of Rifle's abilities. He questions whether Rifle possesses the rare power of creation, as it seems impossible for every one of her medicines to be this superior by accident. The scene shifts abruptly as a frantic voice calls out for Lord Aaron, interrupting the contemplative atmosphere. An urgent report arrives stating that pharmacists they do business with are filing repeated complaints about their recipes. The messenger delivers the devastating news that there are no herbs to be found in the forest, begging Aaron for procurement advice. A heavy thud echoes through the room as the gravity of the resource shortage hits the gathered nobility. Aaron snaps in frustration, shouting that he is too busy to deal with the crisis as his subordinates worry about their impending ruin. Driven to the brink by the daily pressure and the failing supply lines, Aaron seethes in silence as his world begins to unravel. Lord Aaron stands over a desk littered with documents, his expression weary as he deals with the weight of his responsibilities. Aaron reflects on the disastrous complaints flooding his shop because the medicines produced from recipes he bought are failing. He ruthlessly blames the pharmacist's incompetence rather than his own recipes, biting his nail in a fit of frustration. The situation grows dire as he plots to blame Countess Notre's special constitution for the fact that his antidotes aren't working to save her life. He realizes that the Countess's impending death will bring the wrath of Count Notre down upon him. Aaron frets over the Count's refusal to listen to reason or accept gold compensation for the damage done. Panicked by the thought of his enemies joining forces against him, Aaron leans over his desk and desperately wonders how to handle the rising trouble. His dark mood is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of Rouge, who chirps a greeting and offers cookies to ease his fatigue. Aaron is instantly comforted by her presence, thinking how cute she looks as she enters the room with a plate of treats. Despite his affection, a seed of doubt remains as he gazes at her, wondering if the rumors he heard are true. Sensing his hesitation, he asks Rouge if he can speak with her about a sensitive matter. He directly questions her about reports that she was seen with one of the pharmacists he hired the previous night. Aaron admits he has received several reports from other servants but desperately wants to believe they are just nonsense or mistakes. He quickly backtracks, telling her he doesn't actually suspect her because there is no way she would ever do such a thing. The camera zooms in on Rouge's eye, capturing her shock and fear as the accusation lands. Rouge begins to tremble, her eyes welling up with tears as she holds her hand to her mouth in a display of distress. She remains frozen in a silent, tearful pose, appearing deeply hurt by his line of questioning. Suddenly, she lunges forward and clings to Aaron, sobbing and begging for his forgiveness. She explains that she only sought the pharmacist's company because she felt lonely while he was constantly buried in work. Aaron is immediately swayed by her explanation, his suspicion dissolving as he hears her reasons. He apologizes for making her feel uneasy and asks her to believe in his love for her. Pulling her into a warm embrace, Aaron declares that he loves her most of all and that she is everything to him. He strokes her hair and reaffirms his belief that she is a kind girl who would never do anything frivolous. A close-up of her eye reveals a sharp, calculating gaze that contrasts with his belief that she is unlike her clever and stubborn sister. A servant interrupts the moment to announce that the carriage is ready for their journey to House Caraster. Aaron leads Rouge toward the carriage, mentioning how much he looks forward to meeting her father and mother. He notes that her parents must be eagerly waiting for their only daughter to return home after such a long time. Inside the Caraster estate, her parents have prepared a lavish feast with royal palace chefs to satisfy Aaron's palate. Aaron formally thanks Lord and Lady Caraster for their invitation while Rouge enjoys the meal. He teases Rouge about her love for meat, though she stubbornly insists she hates the bitterness of vegetables. Aaron reassures his mother-in-law that Rouge stays healthy by taking supplements from their pharmacy. Lady Caraster notes how well Aaron cares for her daughter, especially given the expensive necklace he gifted her. The conversation shifts as Lord Caraster mentions the recent explosion accident and the hard time Aaron has been having. Aaron admits the struggle, blaming a merchant's negligence for the chaos surrounding his business. He complains that despite his promises of new medicine, angry customers are flooding him with complaints and refusing to rely on his pharmacy. Lord Caraster encourages Aaron to forget his troubles for the night and enjoy the fine food and drink provided. Rouge interrupts the talk of business to beg Aaron for a rejuvenation supplement just like the ones her mother is using. She marvels at how her mother's complexion has improved, mentioning rumors of a village pharmacist who makes incredible skin-rejuvenating medicine. Lady Caraster blushes at the compliment while Rouge expresses her amazement that such medicine exists in the countryside. Lord Caraster jokingly tells Rouge not to talk about another pharmacist's medicine in front of the Count of Herbs. Aaron grows quiet, pondering the idea of a rejuvenation supplement and what it could mean for his business. He recalls that Rifle was working on that research before being kicked out of the estate, and his current pharmacists are struggling to finish it. A realization hits him as he wonders if the mysterious village pharmacist is actually Rifle using a recipe she kept for herself. Aaron turns to Lord Caraster to bring up the subject of Rifle. Lord Caraster coldly dismisses his other daughter, stating he couldn't care less whether she lives or dies. Aaron sips his wine, watching his father-in-law's reaction while thinking of Rifle as a fool who abandoned the family. Lord Caraster's expression hardens as he declares his desire to deliver a fitting punishment to her. Aaron's mind races as he realizes that bringing Rifle back to the estate could solve his recipe problems and save the Countess. He smirks to himself, having formed a devious plan to resolve his current crisis. With a predatory look, Aaron vows that he is determined to find Rifle and bring her back under his control at all costs. After fleeing her oppressive home, the talented apothecary Riafel has successfully established her own path and recently gained recognition from the Gathering of Serpents, hosted by the Askran Apothecary Association. Riafel observes her surroundings with a satisfied smile, noting that everything in her new life seems to be going exceptionally well. Life at her own pharmacy has proven to be truly smooth sailing as she manages her business independently. Riafel and her enthusiastic assistant welcome customers into the brightly lit, well-stocked shop with cheerful energy. Customers immediately notice the presence of a charming new employee helping behind the counter. The shop buzzes with activity as locals arrive to request their usual stomach medicines and various skin supplements. Entrusting the work to her apprentice, Riafel directs Tia to handle the preparation of the stomach medicine while she focuses on the skin supplement. Tia carefully reviews her herbal knowledge, identifying the specific bases needed for headaches versus those required for stomach ailments. Having joined the pharmacy only 4 days ago, Tia has quickly become a central part of Riafel's daily operations. Tia recalls how she was deeply moved by Riafel's arrival in the village, which brought more smiles to the local people through her splendid work. The young girl was particularly inspired by Riafel's cool and heroic actions during a dangerous explosion accident. Driven by that admiration, Tia had begged for a job, declaring her dream to become an apothecary exactly like Riafel. Having already dabbled in pharmacognosy, Tia chose Riafel to be her mentor in the intricate art of medicine making. Under Riafel's watchful eye, the two work closely together to ensure every ingredient is processed with absolute precision. Riafel praises Tia's progress, confirming that the herbs have been crushed evenly and meet her high standards. The next stage of the process involves carefully simmering the prepared mixture in a pot to create a decoction. Riafel teaches that the critical moment to remove the medicine from the heat is when the liquid begins to sparkle and glimmer. A secret trick of the trade is recognizing the specific timing when the inside of the pot glows white during the boiling process. Although the timing of this glow varies by the day and the herb medicines produced at this exact moment are strangely more effective. Riafel reflects on how Lord Aaron and other professional pharmacists seemed puzzled by this glow, as it is invisible to those unaccustomed to it. It becomes clear that Tia is also struggling to perceive the mystical sparkle that Riafel describes. Tia admits she cannot see the sparkle yet, but she remains determined to master the skill. Touched by her apprentice's resolve, Riafel finds her to be a good girl, who will surely see the light someday. Even as she teaches, Riafel herself wonders about the true nature of the mysterious sparkle that illuminates her work. A local elderly man watches the two work and expresses his deep gratitude that Tia has found such a wonderful workplace. He points out that when the two apothecaries stand side by side, they bear a striking resemblance to one another. The villager notes that their hair color and facial features are especially similar, prompting a surprised reaction from Riafel. Tia is delighted by the comparison, exclaiming that having an older sister, like Riafel, makes her incredibly happy. The customers wave goodbye as they leave, leaving the two sisters to continue their work at the pharmacy. Riafel considers how Tia's serious and meticulous personality makes her perfectly suited for the apothecary profession. Tia diligently follows every complex step, from drying herbs for precise periods to adding exact drops of morning dew. Despite her short tenure, Tia has already become an incredibly reliable and humming presence in the shop. Tia notices that Riafel seems unusually happy today and wonders what has caused her mentor's improved mood. Riafel reveals that her friend Al is coming to visit later that day. Tia immediately grows curious and begins to imagine who this Al might be. With a mischievous look, Tia teases Riafel by asking if Al is actually her boyfriend. Blushing, Riafel frantically denies the claim, insisting Al is merely a dear friend and a fellow apothecary. Riafel explains that Al has something important to discuss, so she asks Tia to watch the shop while she goes out to get supplies. Preparing for the noon visit, Riafel heads into the village market to find ingredients for some light snacks. Riafel browses the market stalls, looking at crates of fresh produce for her planned snacks. While she is shopping, a villager approaches her with an urgent expression, interrupting her peaceful morning. The friendly merchant offers Riafel a free piece of fruit, but the gesture is overshadowed by the sudden appearance of a panicked neighbor. The neighbor breathes a sigh of relief at finding Riafel, clearly carrying news of a major crisis. Riafel is shocked to find the villagers so flustered as they prepare to deliver terrible news regarding Tia. The messenger delivers a staggering blow. Tia has just been kidnapped by a nobleman. Riafel is left in disbelief, knowing Tia has lived in the village since birth and has absolutely no connections to the nobility. The witnesses stand by helplessly, unable to explain why such an event occurred. The man describes how the nobleman refused to listen to anyone and forcibly dragged Tia from the shop against her will. Most chillingly, the nobleman claimed he had finally found Tia, calling her the disgrace of his household. Riafel stands frozen in shock as the realization of Tia's hidden past and the danger she is in sinks in. A moment of stunned silence hangs in the air as Riafel's presence is met with a shocked realization that it simply cannot be. Looking between them, the observer notes the uncanny resemblance, unable to believe how much the two really do look alike. A sudden, sharp cry of, "Father?" erupts as the shock of the encounter reaches its peak. Amidst the confusion, Riafel is informed that the village chief has filed a search request and is urged to return home immediately via a waiting carriage. Her eyes flare with a desperate intensity as she demands action right now. Screaming with frantic urgency, she orders them to prepare a carriage immediately to begin her journey. Haunted by the turn of events, she agonizes over how this could happen and the guilt of dragging Tia into her family's toxic quarrels. Tucked away in the rattling carriage, she weeps and prays for Tia's safety, desperately wishing she could take back the pain. A sudden shift in scene reveals a confrontation where someone is warned not to mess with the wrong person. Angry townspeople swarm a carriage, screaming about a quack doctor whose medicine failed and whose ointment caused nothing but rashes. Observing the chaos, bystanders note the absolute disaster unfolding outside Lord Aaron's shop. The crisis deepens as news spreads that all affiliated shops are in ruins and Count Riol is facing a massive lawsuit from the apothecaries. To make matters worse, rumors swirl that the Countess Notre's condition is worsening because of dangerous medicine recipes being sold. Riafel realizes with a sinking heart that the warnings from Al and the others about the recipe's flaws were true. Deciding to face the rest of the way alone, she thanks the driver and steps out of the carriage to walk the remaining distance. As she approaches the manor, her mind is consumed with the singular, desperate question of how to rescue Tia. A chillingly familiar voice interrupts her thoughts, welcoming Riafel back and expressing mock relief at her safe return. Riafel freezes in terror as she looks up to find Lord Aaron standing directly before her. Aaron mockingly praises Baron Calaster as a devoted father for personally visiting the village to retrieve his daughter. Riafel realizes her father truly did come for her, but she is left wondering why Lord Aaron is present at their home as well. The heavy doors of the manor loom as she prepares to enter the den of her family's brewing storm. Driven by a terrible premonition, she begins to run through the halls, knowing she must find Tia before it's too late. She stops short when she hears her father's voice coldly threatening to discipline someone and sell them to a brothel. Baron Calaster informs the victim that they should be grateful, as Lord Aaron is supposedly willing to grant mercy. He sneers at his own foolish daughter, demanding she show gratitude for the narrow escape he is offering. The Baron rages about the tremendous losses he suffered due to her harassment after her engagement was broken off, while Riafel finally spots Tia. Aaron leans in with a serpent smile, accusing Riafel of preparing false medicine recipes in advance because she knew the engagement would fail. He claims that every medicine made from her notes was a poor quality product that forced many apothecaries out of business. Riafel gasps in shock as Aaron demands to know if she even realizes the gravity of the destruction she has allegedly caused. She tries to defend herself, unable to understand how her carefully crafted recipes could ever be labeled as poor quality. Protesting that her work was never fake, she is silenced by those who refuse to listen to her impossible claims. Her parents explode in rage, asking how much disgrace will satisfy her and accusing her of resorting to misdeeds just because Rouge took her place. They call her a fool and even blame her for Lady Katarina's worsening condition, effectively disowning her in their hearts. The accusations continue to pile up, with her family mocking her for showing no pity for Katarina while peddling harmful recipes. Aaron seizes the moment to demand she hand over the genuine recipes and swear to work under him as an apothecary for life to atone for her sins. As the pressure mounts, Riafel feels a familiar, deep-seated pain resurfacing from the depths of her memory. She is struck by the bitter realization that in this family, all the good things have always belonged to Rouge. It is a cruel, established pattern where every bad thing that happens is inevitably forced onto her shoulders. She mourns the fact that everything she ever treasured has been taken and given to her little sister. She collapses inward, a small, broken figure clutching her remaining pride in the darkness. A cold hand reaches out, ready to snatch away the last remnants of her autonomy. As she sits defeated, the people she should have been able to trust prepare to destroy the only thing she has left. With a cruel, triumphant smirk, Lord Aaron takes her precious work and begins to rip the parchment apart. Riafel watches in shattered silence as the physical manifestation of her life's work is torn to shreds before her eyes. Her eyes widen in total despair as she reaches out for the falling pieces of her identity. She falls to her knees, surrounded by the literal fragments of her past and the ruins of her future. Despair takes hold as she realizes that if making medicine is taken from her, she will truly have nothing left. Just as the darkness closes in, a stern voice cuts through the room, warning everyone present not to dare belittle Ms. Riafel. The tension in the room shifts instantly as an unexpected ally makes their presence known. A look of pure, bewildered shock washes over Lord Aaron's face as he utters a confused gasp at the sudden intervention. A group of witnesses vehemently defends the reputation of Ms. Riafel, insisting she is a splendid apothecary who would never sabotage a recipe out of spite. A close-up reveals a young woman's face, her eyes brimming with unshed tears as she listens to the heated confrontation. The onlookers continue their passionate defense, shouting that Ms. Riafel's medicines have saved them countless times and dismissing the accusations as utter nonsense. The tension reaches a breaking point as the accuser is told their words are nothing more than baseless lies. In a sudden explosion of violence, a man delivers a brutal, open-handed strike across the young woman's face, sending her hair flying from the impact. The man towers over the fallen girl, sneering that defending herself is disgraceful and questioning if she has completely lost her mind. A woman glares with intense, sharp-eyed fury, her teeth bared as she seethes at the brat standing before her. The man issues a cold final warning, demanding an immediate confession and total obedience, or else, while the girl remains huddled on the floor. The room falls into a stunned silence as the group of aristocrats is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected guest. A nobleman reacts with outrage at the intrusion, while the newcomer calmly apologizes for entering without permission but explains he heard someone precious to him was there. Lord Calaster stares in shock and recognition, his face breaking into a cold sweat as he realizes exactly who has walked through the door. The mysterious intruder is revealed to be Alex, the Prince of Pharmacology, who gracefully greets Lord Calaster despite the hostile atmosphere. Standing tall with his companion Halbert, Alex offers a polite but firm smile to the gathered nobles. Riafel's mother looks on in utter confusion, demanding to know who this man is and why he has interrupted their family business. Shocked by their presence, the girl asks Al and Halbert why they have come to her parents' house. The outraged noble shouts at Alex, demanding to know what he thinks he is doing and if he has any inkling of the high status of the man he is interrupting. Alex remains unfazed by the shouting, his expression unreadable as the room's hostility pivots toward him. With absolute authority, Alex demands that they immediately hand over the girl. He coolly adds that any further conversation or explanation can only happen once she is safely in his custody. As the girl thanks him in a trembling voice, Alex encourages her to go with him while the nobles in the background seethe with impotent rage. Halbert stands protectively in front of the group, his hand resting on his sword as a silent, lethal warning against any interference. Riafel's father loses his composure entirely, screaming for the guards to seize the intruders along with his own daughter. Lord Aaron frantically tries to intervene, recognizing the man and realizing his father is making a catastrophic mistake. Aaron points out that he recognizes Alex from the newspaper as a famous member of the Snake Collector. Alex acknowledges the recognition with a calm, closed-eye smile that only further unnerves the room. Aaron's hostility instantly turns into fawning worship, as he gushes that meeting a famous member of the Snake Collector is like a dream come true. Now desperate to please, Aaron asks why Lord Alex has come and wonders if he has reconsidered the rescinded invitation. The older woman looks on with skepticism, asking if these Snake Collector people are actually as impressive as Aaron claims. Aaron's wife explains to her mother-in-law that the Snake Collector is an organization of immense importance. She elaborates that they are a group of first-class apothecaries within the Askran nation whose power rivals even that of the royal family. Riafel's father remains obstinate, demanding to know what right an apothecary from another country has to meddle in his family's private problems. He shouts at Alex, asserting that his daughter is his property and no foreign association has the authority to intervene. Alex listens to the man's rant with a chilling, narrowed gaze, simply telling him to stay out of it. Raising a hand in a dismissive gesture, Alex states that he cannot fulfill the request to hand over the daughter. With a sharp, piercing gaze, Alex drops a bombshell by declaring that the young lady currently in the room is not actually Lady Riafel. The family reacts with absolute, jaw-dropping shock, unable to process the claim that the girl they've been abusing is a fake. The father stammers in disbelief, struggling to wrap his head around the idea that the girl is not his daughter. Alex mocks the man's supposed fatherhood, asking if he has truly forgotten his own child's face so completely. In a panic, the father orders guards to the village to find the real, foolish girl, declaring he doesn't care what happens to the peasants there. A brilliant light shatters the scene as a figure begins to transform, tearing away the facade. Amidst the chaos of the shattering illusion, the nobles and Alex's team watch as the girl's true form begins to emerge. A voice rings out, cutting through the confusion with absolute clarity. The transformation completes, revealing a woman with long, braided hair and a look of cold, determined resolve. Riafel stands tall and defiant, looking her father in the eye and declaring that if he is looking for his daughter, she is right here. The servants and onlookers gasp in recognition, realizing that the real Lady Riafel has finally revealed herself. The father attempts to save face by claiming the real one is just as ugly as the fake, while his wife looks on in horror. Riafel has finally reached her limit, her voice booming as she declares she has had enough. With a single, powerful blow, Riafel strikes her father down, leaving the man sprawled unconscious on the floor. The room is left in a state of absolute paralysis as the family watches their patriarch fall. Aaron and the mother stare in terrified silence at the powerful, true Riafel standing over her defeated father. A massive impact shatters the room, sending furniture flying as the explosive force of years of pent-up resentment finally boils over. Chaos erupts as a woman cries out for her darling, while Riafel's mother-in-law screams for her father-in-law amidst the wreckage. Riafel stands amidst the dust and debris, her name echoing through the room as the confrontation reaches its peak. Tia appears with tears of joy, her face flushed as she cries out Riafel's name in a moment of pure relief. Riafel pulls Tia into a desperate, emotional embrace, sobbing an apology and taking full responsibility for the danger Tia faced. Tia smiles warmly through the hug, reassuring Lady Riafel that she always had faith her savior would come for her. Tia looks up with admiration, telling Riafel that the display of power she just witnessed was incredibly cool. Riafel admits that her sudden outburst was merely the result of years of suppressed anger finally reaching its breaking point. Turning to the newcomers, Riafel questions Al and Halbert about their sudden appearance at the scene. Halbert explains they rushed over the moment they saw the village was torn up and heard the dire situation unfolding. Despite the explanation, Riafel remains puzzled, wondering how they could have possibly known Tia was being held in this specific location. Al looks away solemnly, admitting he had never explicitly mentioned his knowledge of her secret background. He confesses that he was well aware she was actually a member of the noble Karastar baronial family. Stunned by the revelation, Riafel asks if he has known the truth about her identity ever since the day of that specific accident. Al clears his throat awkwardly, confessing that while he recognized her skill as an apothecary, he mainly remembered her because she was just cute. He explains that he later connected the rumors of Count Leol's excellent apothecary to her true identity. Noticing that Riafel was intentionally trying to hide her noble past, Al decided it was best to respect her wishes. He admits he chose to pretend he didn't know the truth to keep her secret safe. Riafel apologizes for her silence, realizing now that her attempts at deception were completely transparent to him. Al defends his actions, stating he knew she was reckless enough to attempt a rescue mission alone regardless of the danger. He offers a sincere apology but maintains that charging into such a den of vipers without backup was far too dangerous. Looking down in sorrow, Riafel explains that she was overwhelmed by the realization that they had kidnapped Tia by mistaking her for Riafel herself. Tears well up in her eyes as she confesses she simply couldn't stand by and do nothing while an innocent suffered in her place. Al's voice softens as he tells Lady Riafel that he doesn't know what he would have done if something had actually happened to her. Riafel notices Al's hand is trembling with fear for her safety, realizing the depth of his concern. The villainous Count Leol is left reeling, shocked to discover Riafel is on familiar terms with the famous prince of pharmacology. The Count's horror deepens as he realizes she is also connected to the legendary Sword Saint. Halbert, the Sword Saint, glares with terrifying intensity, his presence alone causing the Count to cower in fear. Al addresses Count Leol directly, bringing up the previous invitation for Riafel to join the prestigious association. With a cold and final look, Al delivers a stinging rejection to the Count's proposal. The tension in the room is palpable as Al prepares to make a definitive declaration about Riafel's future. Al boldly announces that they will be welcoming Lady Riafel into the ranks of the elite snake collector instead. The Count and his associates are left completely gobsmacked by the news of such a high-level recruitment. Riafel herself is stunned into silence, her mouth agape at the prospect of joining such a powerful organization. Al laughs, revealing that his primary reason for the visit was to personally deliver this life-changing offer. The Count's son sneers in disbelief, questioning why a group that rivals the royal family would ever want someone like Riafel. He continues his verbal assault, claiming a failure like her would be absolutely useless to the snake collector. The Count glares at his daughter, his eyes narrowing as he prepares to exert his parental authority one last time. He demands she refuse the offer, reminding her of the debt she owes to the family that gave her life and raised her. The Count threatens her with vague consequences, accusing her of repaying his supposed kindness with nothing but ingratitude. He barks that she must spend her entire life devoted to the family's interests and serving Lord Aaron. Al gently takes Riafel's hand, his calm touch cutting through her father's aggressive demands. He stands protectively by her side, ignoring the Count's blustering to focus entirely on Riafel. Al gazes at her with kindness, waiting for her to find her own voice amidst the pressure. In a quiet moment of clarity, Al asks Riafel the only question that truly matters. What does she want to do? Riafel grips his hand back, realizing that her future is no longer tied to the shadows of her past. She stands tall between her past and her future, ready to make a choice that belongs to her alone. Halbert watches with a satisfied smirk, knowing the girl is finally about to break her chains. Riafel finds her resolve, a soft and confident smile forming on her face as she looks toward her new life. Declaring her independence, Riafel chooses the path where she finally lives for herself. Riafel stares into the distance with a gentle smile, softly reassuring herself that everything will be all right. Fueled by determination, she declares that her life's work culminates in this moment as she strives to become an apothecary worthy of the snake collector. A blonde nobleman shouts a desperate warning to the Prince of Pharmacology while a mustachioed man watches with a grimace of pure shock. Amidst a bitter confrontation, the nobleman argues that Riafel's broken engagement was her own doing and that she is merely playing the victim. He continues his venomous tirade, labeling her a wicked woman who stooped to swapping medicine recipes out of sheer spite. Pacing the room in a fit of rage, the Herb Count insists that Riafel is a fraud who must have prepared a body double to steal his invitation. Al stands tall and looks down with cold disdain, telling the man that he is truly despicable to his very core. Moving with intimidating speed, Al pins the nobleman against the wall and looms over him with a terrifyingly calm expression. Trembling in Al's grasp, the nobleman breaks into a cold sweat as the prince promises to investigate the recipe matter later. With a chilling smile, Al warns him to never utter another word to belittle Lady Riafel while he is still in a calm mood. Riafel watches the exchange with wide eyes, realizing just how scary Al can be when he is truly angry. Once the tension settles, Al turns back to Riafel and mentions that he has a favor to ask of her. He explains the dire situation regarding Countess Notre, who was poisoned some time ago and has shown no signs of improvement. Al asks Riafel to accompany him to see the Countess, and she agrees without a moment's hesitation. As Riafel looks on in surprise, Al reveals that he had already been planning on visiting Count Notre himself. Turning his attention back to the disgraced nobleman, Al addresses him as Count Leol and prepare for their departure. Count Leol is left stammering in confusion when Al suddenly asks if the Count would please accompany them as well. The group steps out onto the stone path, their boots clicking against the ground as they head toward the next destination. Al leads the way with purpose, announcing that they are heading straight to the Notre estate. The narrative reveals that the tragedy began at a tea party where many guests were poisoned after eating a specific tart. While most victims recovered quickly with antidotes, Countess Notre remains in critical condition with no sign of recovery. Because of her unique and worsening condition, a formal request for help was finally sent to the snake collector. Riafel recalls the Countess's past kindness during her visits, looking down sadly at the memory of their shared time. Determined to save a woman who was always good to her, Riafel turns to Al and begs him to lend her his strength. Al nods in agreement, telling Riafel that it is incredibly reassuring to have her by his side for this task. Meanwhile, a guard with a massive sword sits across from a dejected Count Leol as their carriage jolts along the road. The carriage finally arrives at the gates of the Notre estate, a grand building covered in lush greenery. Riafel reflects on how many times the Countess had invited her here in the past. Stepping out of the carriage with Al, Riafel realizes that this is the first time she has actually set foot on the grounds. Count Notre meets them at the gate, expressing his utter shock that the prince would come to his home in person. However, the Count quickly turns his anger toward Lord Leol, accusing him of coming only to mock his suffering wife. Leol tries to defend himself, insisting that he did everything in his power to save Lady Notre. The Count snaps back, revealing he heard Leol was bad-mouthing apothecaries and calling their skills useless behind their backs. Al interjects with a calm authority, noting he is well aware of Lord Aaron's questionable activities but refrains from passing judgment yet. The Count's eyes widen as he finally recognizes Princess Riafel, the daughter of Lord Calaster, standing beside the prince. His demeanor softens instantly as he welcomes her, stating that his wife will be very happy to see her again. Looking weary, Count Notre expresses his deep gratitude for the help they are providing. He acknowledges that they are there to provide the help that Lord Leol's shop could not provide. The Count invites them inside and offers to lead them directly to his wife's room while Al asks for permission to check her condition. As they walk through the grounds, Riafel is struck by the beauty of the gardens surrounding the estate. She stops to examine the plants closely, her eyes filled with curiosity and a hint of concern. Her brow furrows as she notices that despite the overall beauty, some parts of the garden have begun to wither. Count Notre strikes up a conversation with Riafel as they walk, shifting the topic back to the prince. When the Count asks if she is friends with Al, Riafel smiles warmly and describes him as a very kind and wonderful person. The Count chuckles at her earnest response, seemingly pleased by her high opinion of the prince. Riafel is relieved to see that the Count already knows Al, noting to herself that it is good to hear. She is quietly impressed that Al's name and reputation are so well known even among the high nobility. The Count advises Riafel to cherish her bond with the prince before knocking on the door to Katerina's room. They enter the dimly lit bedroom where the Countess lies bedridden and pale behind thin curtains. Riafel gasps in horror as she sees Katerina's condition, her face contorted with shock and immediate concern. Countess Notre lies bedridden and pale, her life force visibly draining as her husband watches in agony. The protagonist realizes the Countess is far weaker than expected and concludes he must find the true cause of her illness immediately if she is to recover. Al remains silent, his presence a heavy weight in the room as the tension mounts. Leaning over the patient, Al begins a careful physical examination, his focus narrowing on her condition. Witnesses watch in confusion as Al appears to be sniffing for a specific scent near the Countess. Al's sharp eyes narrow as he detects a subtle, hidden clue that others have missed. Confirming his suspicions, Al realizes the nature of the affliction while his companion asks for an explanation. A smug apothecary interrupts, claiming he already knows the Prince of Pharmacy has found nothing new. The arrogant man declares with cold finality that there is absolutely nothing more that can be done for the dying Countess. The Count reacts with visceral shock, his hand flying to his chest at the blunt proclamation of his wife's certain death. He lashes out at the apothecary, demanding how he could say something so cruel and hopeless in front of the suffering patient and her family. The apothecary dismisses the outburst, insisting that no amount of antidotes will work because the situation is beyond help. Contrasting the despair, Al calmly asserts that the Countess can still be saved if they perform the correct treatment immediately. Al offers a confident, knowing smile that radiates reassurance to those in the room. The Count stares back, gripped by a sudden, desperate hope that his wife might actually survive. The rival apothecary's face contorts in sweaty disbelief, stunned that someone would dare challenge his grim diagnosis. Al explains that while the original poison in the tart was neutralized, the Countess is actually being tormented by a second, different poison that mimics the first. The room erupts in chaos as the Count and the maid reel at the terrifying possibility that someone is still actively poisoning her. Al reveals that he noticed something highly suspicious in the garden the moment he arrived at the estate. He questions the Count on whether his wife has a habit of growing and consuming her own medicinal herbs. Al prepares to name the specific plant he believes is the culprit. He asks if the Countess has been brewing these garden plants into a tea and drinking them regularly. The Count confirms that his wife brewed a specific drink after every meal to calm her nerves and anxiety. Al notes that the garden is filled with these deceptive plants and that the various antidotes she took only exacerbated the issue. Riafel looks out the window, her eyes widening as she identifies the mysterious herb as paterella grass. Al confirms Riafel's correct identification with a slight, satisfied smirk. The Count is left utterly bewildered, unable to fathom why his wife would be drinking something as specific as paterella grass tea. Frustrated and confused, the Count demands that Riafel explain exactly what is going on. Al mocks the rival apothecary, expressing shock that a supposed shop owner wouldn't know the basic properties of such a common herb. The apothecary defensively argues that the grass is a standard ingredient for ointments. Al elaborates that while paterella grass has potent analgesic properties for salves, it is often blended into antidotes to boost their power. However, he warns that if a certain amount is exceeded, the herb's properties shift and turn other medicinal plants into deadly toxins. He reminds the room that medicine and poison are merely two sides of the same coin, capable of either saving or killing depending on the use. Al stands tall among the group, declaring that the very reason apothecaries exist is to manage this dangerous balance. Looking the Count in the eye, Al makes a solemn vow to save the Countess and asks for his absolute trust. The Count's eyes fill with tears as he processes the weight of Al's expertise and the hope he offers. Overwhelmed with emotion, the Count grasps Riafel's hands and entrusts his beloved wife's life entirely to their care. Al shifts into action, noting that they only need a few specific ingredients to create the necessary antidote. He directs the Count to gather items from his storage while his companion enthusiastically agrees to help prepare the cure. Al finds it strange that the Countess would drink paterella grass tea despite it being notoriously hard on the stomach. Riafel shares his doubts, wondering if the Countess was perhaps unaware of the dangers hidden in her own garden. The rival apothecary tries to brush off the complexity of the situation, insisting the cause doesn't matter as much as the result. The arrogant man begins to laugh boisterously, loudly proclaiming that his apothecary cannot be held at fault for this mess. He boasts that his superior management is actually proven by how quickly the initial tart poison was neutralized. The group stands in tense silence as the apothecary's hubris fills the room. He continues his verbal assault, sneering that while gardening is a fine hobby, drinking the results shows a pathetic lack of common sense. He doubles down on his insult, flatly stating that the Countess was acting without any rational thought. Furious at the blatant disrespect, the Count grabs the laughing apothecary by the collar and demands to know if he is intentionally insulting his wife. The apothecary sneers back, telling the Count he won't be blamed for the woman's illness while the Count warns him not to say another word. The Count looms over the man with murderous intent, the confrontation reaching a breaking point as he prepares to strike. Waking from her slumber, the ailing Countess Notre gazes up and weakly asks if someone is there. Mistaking her visitor, she apologizes to Katerina for waking her after failing to meet in her dreams. Clutching her hand, Count Notre gently reassures her that he only woke up because he was feeling lonely. Relieved by Lord Leol's presence, the Count urgently requests that Apothecary Ewald be summoned. Leol stiffens as the Count praises Ewald, claiming the herbal tea he taught him to make cured his anxiety. Overhearing the name, a young man and Riafel gasp in sheer disbelief at the mention of Apothecary Ewald. Stepping forward with a polite smile, the pharmacist Al greets Riafel after a long time while she questions his identity. Al formally introduces himself to Countess Notre, assuring her that his companion is preparing the antidote ingredients to cure her. Accepting her fate with a gentle chuckle, The Countess admits she is quite accustomed to bitter things. She casually mentions that she forces herself to drink a harsh herbal tea every single day. Al warns the medicine might be bitter, prompting the Countess to quietly doubt if any antidote will actually work on her. Interrupting the moment, Leol asks the Countess about her senior apothecary as the Count tries to urge her to rest. Count Notre violently seizes Lord Leol's arm in a sudden, aggressive grip. Glaring with intense suspicion, the Count demands to know if Leol is referring to Apothecary Ewald. A flashback reveals Ewald eagerly promoting Patarella grass tea as a beneficial remedy learned from Leol's shop. Riafel silently recalls her initial hesitation and worry over using the questionable Patarella grass. Despite her doubts, she remembers being ultimately swayed by Apothecary Ewald's overwhelming enthusiasm. Tension thickens across the room as the group gathers tightly around the Countess's bed. Someone breaks the silence, demanding clarity on the shocking implications being made. Lord Aaron visibly recoils as the heavy accusation hangs in the air. Furious, the Count screams at Leol, accusing his hired pharmacist of deliberately leading his wife astray. Panicking under the Count's violent grasp, Leol desperately denies having any idea what he is talking about. In a sudden twist, the Count points a trembling finger and shifts the entire blame onto Riafel. Shocked by the accusation, Riafel listens as the Count yells that she and her fellow apothecarists should be held responsible. The Count stubbornly insists that the pharmacists who worked directly with Ewald are the ones at fault. Leaping to her defense, Al fiercely orders the Count to stop, shouting that Riafel has absolutely nothing to do with it. Aaron maliciously berates Riafel, insulting her lack of charm and calling her abilities entirely below average. Aggressively grabbing her arm, Aaron pulls Riafel close to intimidate her. Unfazed by his hostility, Riafel casts a cold glance and flatly asks if he is done throwing his tantrum. Without a hint of fear, she sternly demands that he let her go immediately. Aaron's face contorts with explosive rage as he screams at her for showing such a defiant attitude. Moving with swift precision, Riafel cleanly breaks Aaron's tight grip in a blur of motion. Aaron stares in utter confusion as Riafel raises 2 fingers toward his forehead. With absolute authority, she commands Aaron to back off. She firmly orders the irate noble to calm down. Unleashing a powerful kinetic blast, Riafel violently slams Aaron face-first into the solid floor. Groaning in pain, Aaron looks up from the ground and stammers her name in pure shock. A strained, desperate smile creeps across Aaron's bruised face as he looks up at her. Riafel glares down at him, her eyes practically radiating an icy, unforgiving contempt. Trembling, Aaron reaches his hand out and weakly questions why she would do such a thing. Desperation bleeding into his voice, he begs to know why she refuses to reach her hand out to him anymore. He pathetically reminds her that she used to blindly obey every single command he gave. Looking entirely unbothered, Riafel coldly asks if he actually thinks her feelings haven't changed since then. She cuts him down with her words, stating she has no patience for people who are that arrogant. She continues her ruthless verbal assault, adding the word selfish to his list of flaws. Oblivious to the drama, Count Notre continues to cradle his sickly wife in the background. Aaron slumps in total defeat as she drops the final insult, calling him incredibly childish. Delivering the final blow, she brutally declares that she will never return to someone like him. Dismissing the encounter entirely, Riafel turns to her worried maids and quickly asks about the Countess's condition. Ignoring her question, a frantic maid instead fusses over how messy Riafel's hair has become during the scuffle. Desperate and entirely broken, Aaron pathetically begs for her help while questioning how she can be so cruel. Continuing his miserable display, Aaron insists he still needs her as Riafel turns away with a cheerful smile. Staring in utter devastation, Aaron freezes as Riafel walks away without a single backward glance. Safe in another room, Riafel sits peacefully as Al gently arranges her messy hair. Announcing their next move, Al states they will head to another room to prepare the antidote now that the poison is identified. Left behind with the hostile Count, Aaron trembles and complains about feeling completely out of place. Tension suffocates the room as Count Notre locks eyes with Aaron in a deadly, silent glare. Sweating profusely, Aaron shrinks into his seat and desperately wonders when the antidote will be ready while enduring the Count's raptor-like stare. The Count's ferocious aura manifests as a roaring tiger, causing Aaron to violently flinch in pure terror. Unable to bear the crushing pressure, Aaron internally begs for Riafel to take him with her. Transitioning smoothly to their task, Al officially begins the preparation for the vital antidote. Stepping into his role as a mentor, Al instructs Riafel to closely follow the recipe he handed her earlier. Al explains that observing other pharmacists is highly educational since preparations differ slightly even with identical ingredients. Buzzing with anticipation, Riafel admits her excitement at finally witnessing Al's preparation methods as he moves to boil water. Moving with blinding speed, Al blurs into action and flawlessly handles the complex array of tools and ingredients. Utterly mesmerized by his movements, Riafel gasps in sheer awe at Al's incredibly skillful handling. Watching him breeze through the intricate process, Riafel realizes in shock that he has memorized every single step. Leaning in with sharp focus, Riafel carefully analyzes the boiling mixture before speaking up. Drawing from her family's techniques, she boldly suggests freezing the herb with an ice magic stone to boost its effectiveness. Impressed by her insight, Al instantly agrees and asks her to relay the instruction to Halbert. A quick flashback reveals Riafel's past, showing her standing among dismissive, robed pharmacists who ignored her ideas. Recalling her harsh past, Riafel reflects on how her previous colleagues always rejected her opinions. Smiling warmly at the memory of his kindness, she praises Al for being a fine person despite vastly outranking her in skill. Validating her expertise completely, Al eagerly encourages Riafel to keep sharing any more suggestions she might have. Glowing with newfound confidence, Riafel happily agrees and hands over the next vital ingredient. Working together in perfect harmony, the group successfully completes the glowing antidote. Waiting anxiously in the suffocating silence, Aaron continues to sweat under the pressure. Breaking the tension, Al and Riafel finally emerge from the room and apologize for keeping them waiting. Approaching the nervous group, Riafel smiles as they eagerly ask about the status of the antidote. Presenting a brilliantly glowing flask, Riafel proudly declares its effectiveness is guaranteed by the gathering of serpents. Gazing at the miraculous cure, Count Notre exhales a heavy breath of relief knowing his wife will finally be saved. Eager to escape the hostile environment, Aaron immediately jumps up and suggests they leave this uncomfortable place. Ignoring the cowardly noble, the Count turns to respectfully praise Riafel's excellent handling as her disciple. Boiling with jealousy, Aaron furiously questions why even the little girl is receiving praise from the Prince of Pharmacology. While Aaron schemes to claim unearned glory as her former fiancé, Al approaches the Count with instructions to take the medicine twice a day. Explaining the careful dosage, Al notes that a fast-acting antidote exists but would place far too much strain on the Countess's fragile body. Al details his cautious strategy to gradually flush the poison out while using a digestive medicine to ease the harsh side effects. Deeply moved by the comprehensive care, the Count stares at the glowing bottle and marvels at Al's thoroughness. Overwhelmed with profound gratitude, Count Notre promises to never forget this debt and offers to pay absolutely any price. Raising a hand to stop him, Al humbly but firmly refuses to take any payment for this specific case. Hearing this shocking refusal, Aaron snaps his head toward the pharmacist in utter disbelief. Al smoothly explains that members not wearing their official robes are strictly forbidden from accepting payment for medicine. Turning to Riafel with a knowing smile, Al casually mentions that this is simply one of the gathering of Serpent's core rules. Enraged by the lost profit, Aaron screams that they are just giving medicine away for free instead of extorting a hefty payment. The horrifying realization dawns on Aaron as he pieces together that Al purposely removed his robe just to enforce this rule. Gritting his teeth in bitter frustration, Aaron clicks his tongue at the monumental missed opportunity. Walking out toward their waiting carriage, Aaron laments that the prestigious association he admired upholds such ridiculous rules. Slumping his shoulders in total defeat, Aaron sighs heavily and admits he is too stunned to even speak. Pivoting back to the grim reality of the crime, Al firmly informs Count Notre that they will now hand Apothecary Ewald over. Standing tall outside the estate, Al coldly promises to visit the corrupt apothecary tomorrow to hear his excuses regarding the lethal recipes. Glaring with a sinister intensity, Aaron whispers a chilling question into the stifling silence. Aaron arrogantly distances himself from Riafel's leftover recipes, shifting the blame entirely onto his hired pharmacists for handling the tedious management and mixing. Despite his confident excuses, a creeping unease crawls over Aaron's skin as a profoundly unpleasant sensation unsettles his nerves. Suddenly snapping out of his thoughts, Aaron turns his head as something unexpected catches his attention. Stepping into the grand hall, Aaron crinkles his nose at the overwhelmingly sickly sweet aroma suffocating the air. His eyes widen in absolute horror as the sheer, absurd scale of the dessert display finally registers. Stumbling backward, Aaron gasps in pure shock at the sight of a towering, multi-tiered cake dominating his room. Dwarfed by the massive confection, Aaron desperately stammers in complete, overwhelming confusion. Rage and bewilderment violently clash as Aaron screams into the room, demanding to know what is happening. Furious, he insists that he never authorized such an extravagant and ridiculous culinary order. He frantically rationalizes that his own servants completely lack the advanced skills required, realizing this masterpiece could only belong to an exclusive royal pâtissier. Aaron freezes in his tracks as a sickly sweet, incredibly cheerful voice echoes through the sugar-filled room. Recognizing the familiar tone instantly, Aaron sharply turns his head toward the source. Sitting amidst the feast, Rouge happily greets him while munching on a sweet treat, leaving Aaron staring in pure disbelief. Instantly melting at her joyful smile, Aaron brushes his anger aside and weakly concedes that her happiness is the only thing that matters. Suddenly, Rouge pauses her frantic eating and stares forward with wide, startled eyes. Her bubbly demeanor drops into a pitiable pout as she complains about Aaron leaving her alone for so long. Weaponizing her cuteness, Rouge looks up through her eyelashes and whines about how terribly lonely she felt without him. An imaginary arrow violently pierces Aaron's heart, leaving him completely infatuated and clutching his chest in sheer bliss. Aaron gazes down at Rouge with absolute adoration, entirely captivated by her flawless, enchanting presence. Breaking the romantic tension, a passing maid urgently points out that Rouge has smeared cream all over her pendant. Looking down in alarm, Rouge gasps as she realizes her precious jewelry is covered in a sticky mess. The maid unhelpfully notes that the disaster could have been easily avoided if Rouge had simply removed the sapphire beforehand. Bursting into theatrical tears, Rouge wails dramatically over the ruined sapphire while Aaron panics instantly. Desperately trying to comfort her, Aaron pleads with Rouge to stop crying as she only wails louder. Shifting his panic into blazing anger, Aaron casts a murderous, unforgiving glare at the trembling maids. Furious, Aaron aggressively blames the staff for failing to protect Rouge's pendant, fiercely demanding to know why they did not force her to remove it. Trembling in absolute fear, the maid desperately explains that they did indeed advise Rouge to take the necklace off before eating. Sobbing heavily, Rouge violently twists the narrative, claiming the maid cruelly insulted her messy eating habits. Throwing a full-blown tantrum, Rouge cries that she refuses to listen to such an awful, mean-spirited servant. Stepping forward with lethal intent, Aaron furiously accuses the lowly maid of daring to insult his beloved as she desperately begs for her life. Completely ignoring her frantic pleas, Aaron glares down at the terrified maid with cold, unforgiving eyes. Pulling the weeping Rouge into a protective embrace, Aaron declares that her hurt feelings are the only absolute truth. He ruthlessly seals the maid's fate, stating that Rouge's perceived insult is as good as reality. Without a shred of mercy, Aaron brutally fires the maid on the spot for her perceived incompetence. Collapsing to the floor in pure despair, the maid begs Lord Aaron for forgiveness and a sliver of mercy. Sobbing against the hard floor, she frantically repeats that she never intended to insult Lady Rouge. Exploding with tyrannical rage, Aaron violently screams at the lowly commoner to shut her mouth and get out of his mansion immediately. Adding insult to injury, Aaron spitefully declares that he is withholding her entire month's wages as punishment. Whirling around to the remaining terrified staff, Aaron aggressively barks at the utterly useless servants to get back to work. Boiling with misplaced anger, Aaron internally curses Riafel, the fake sword saint, and the cowardly Count Notray as totally worthless. His mental tirade intensifies as he fiercely blasts the Prince of Pharmacology and the hypocritical gathering of serpents for their foolish rules. Shaking off his furious rant, Aaron proudly reminds himself that none of those fools matter anymore. A smug, twisted grin spreads across Aaron's face as he revels in possessing Rouge entirely. Spinning back around with a theatrical flair, Aaron proudly announces that he has banished the useless fools and excitedly calls out to Rouge to resume their delightful meal. Entirely unfazed by the ruined maid's life, Rouge blankly stares ahead and casually mentions she has grown tired of the sapphire pendant. Tracing the sticky necklace with her fingers, Rouge chillingly demands a bright, blood-red ruby instead. Moving with sudden, dismissive apathy, Rouge violently unclasps the once precious jewel from her neck. The heavy sapphire clatters against the floor, leaving Aaron standing in complete, bewildered silence. Without a single backward glance, Rouge coldly walks away as a desperate Aaron stammers for her to wait. As the heavy sensation of a full stomach takes hold, a character succumbs to a deep, weary yawn. Lord Aaron stares out with a dazed and trembling expression as his consciousness begins to flicker. The ornate doors click shut with a final good night, addressed to the slumbering Lord Aaron. Traces of a half-eaten feast and abandoned silverware linger in the silent, moonlit hall as a figure walks away. A voice recalls how they provided every luxury, from dresses to forced gifts, just to satisfy another's endless desires. The speaker grimaces in the shadows, overwhelmed by a sudden wave of intense self-loathing. Clutching a tarnished pendant, the man laments how its lost brilliance now perfectly reflects his own ruined state. Regret fills his heart as he wonders if his fate would have changed had he chosen Riafel over Rouge. Bowed by the weight of his choices, the lone figure collapses in despair amidst the grandeur of the room. With a charming smile, the Duke of House Van Helger welcomes the members of the Snake Collector into his domain. The Duke modestly offers his home to Riafel and her companion, claiming he can provide little in the way of luxury. Riafel stares in utter disbelief, her eyes widening at the Duke's humble claim. The sheer scale of the massive, shimmering estate leaves the visitors completely stunned by its magnificence. Riafel realizes they are in the presence of a ducal head whose power rivals that of the royal family itself. Leaving Count Seatley's estate behind, she marvels that their journey led them to such a high-ranking noble. She is further shocked to learn that this powerful man is even allowing them to stay the night. A gentle, knowing smile plays across the companion's face as they settle into the Duke's hospitality. The Duke reveals he has a long-standing connection with Al, having once purchased medicine from the Snake Collector. That initial professional exchange eventually blossomed into a genuine friendship between the Duke and Alex. The Duke explains that he provides food and shelter to the group in exchange for their recurring assistance. He brushes off their gratitude, insisting that their relationship is a mutually beneficial arrangement. The Duke notes with a smirk that this is the very first time Alex has ever brought a lady along. Alex flushes with embarrassment, quickly shouting at the Duke to stop bringing up such personal details. A brief, awkward silence follows as Riafel processes the Duke's teasing comment. The conversation turns grim as they discuss how the Countess's life was threatened by Count Leol's Pharmacist. The Duke emphasizes the need for a swift investigation into the herbal tea that Ewald recommended. He asks Lady Riafel if she has had any personal dealings with the suspicious pharmacist, Ewald. Riafel recalls Ewald as a smooth-tongued man who was always quick to flatter Count Leol. Though he was charming, she admits she remains skeptical of his actual medical skills. Puzzled by the earlier events, Riafel speaks up to ask about something that has been weighing on her mind. She asks Al how he was able to identify the specific poison affecting the Countess so rapidly. Al explains that he possesses a supernatural sense of smell that allows him to distinguish between drugs and toxins. He reveals he can detect trace components of poison even from a patient's lingering breath. Riafel finally understands how Al was able to notice the subtle differences during their previous encounter. Alex proudly interjects, claiming that Al has been blessed with the grace of the medicine god. Al leaps up in a panic, desperately denying the existence of any such divine blessing. He insists his abilities are merely a skill honed through years of grueling habit and training. Despite his humble protests, the group remains curious about the true nature of his incredible gift. Riafel finds solace in the fact that Tia is safe and the Countess managed to survive the ordeal. She breathes a sigh of relief, thankful that the antidote was prepared just in time to save a life. The group reflects on their success in retrieving Tia before any permanent tragedy could occur. Despite the victory, a sense of lingering dread causes Riafel to tighten her grip in silence. The Duke reminds them that they still must deal with abusive parents and the case of a stolen recipe. Riafel looks on with a heavy heart as she realizes their problems are only continuing to pile up. The heavy atmosphere is broken when a servant arrives to announce that dinner has been fully prepared. The Duke encourages his friends to set aside their worries, noting how heavily their doubts are weighing on them. He insists that they must first restore their strength if they hope to face the challenges ahead. With a grand gesture, the Duke invites everyone to eat and drink their fill for the night. Riafel is delighted by the meal, finding the food absolutely delicious. The Duke offers Alex a bottle of his smooth wine to take home as they enjoy a moment of respite. While a dessert is served, a guest demands to know who made it, prompting a waiter to rush off and call for the chef. Tia and her companion let out a joyful cry as they relax into a luxurious bath filled with floating roses. Submerged in the warm water, Tia sighs happily and admits that the soothing experience feels exactly like a dream. Steam rises from the ornate bathhouse as the girls declare this moment to be the absolute best. The scene shifts to a serene evening view of the building nestled among dark, towering trees under a starlit sky. Standing on a stone balcony, Lady Riefel takes a deep breath and admires how wonderful the cool night breeze feels. Still feeling restless and unable to sleep, she looks out over the railing and notices something moving below. Her eyes widen as she spots a solitary figure working quietly in the garden late at night. Surprised, Riefel rushes down the grand staircase to investigate the mysterious visitor. She calls out in shock upon realizing the person in the garden is Al. Riefel approaches him, wondering aloud what could possibly bring him out to work at such a late hour. Al reassures her that he isn't being forced to do chores for lodging, explaining that this is actually personal work. He carefully reaches out to harvest a delicate, pale flower from the garden floor. Al explains that these herbs are called nuez grass, a rare plant that only blooms under the light of the moon. He reveals that the Duke is helping him cultivate the grass because its petals contain compounds that treat hay fever more effectively than traditional medicine. Riefel is amazed, noting that it is her very first time seeing the fabled nuez grass in person. Admitting she couldn't sleep either, she suggests that moving around might help her finally feel tired. Despite Al's initial polite protests, she insists on helping him pick the moonlit herbs. Al eventually relents and accepts her offer of assistance with a gentle smile. Concerned for her well-being, he insists that she wear his robe so she doesn't catch a chill in the night air. Riefel blushes and thanks him as he drapes the heavy garment over her shoulders. The two sit together in the luminous garden, quietly filling a basket with the glowing flowers. Looking over at him, Riefel asks Al what originally inspired him to pursue the path of a pharmacist. Al reveals that his passion for medicine was born from a dark time when he fell gravely ill as a young child. He describes how he suffered from a disease that was considered incurable, where no known remedy offered any relief. The memory is heavy as he admits that, back then, he truly believed his life was coming to an end. A flashback shows a young, frail Al lying in a large bed, looking weak and exhausted. He explains that his fate changed the moment the members of the snake collector appeared at his bedside. 3 mysterious figures gathered around his bed, bringing specialized equipment to treat his condition. One of the healers gently administered a remedy, carefully tending to the dying boy. Slowly, the young Al began to regain his strength under their expert and compassionate care. Now fully recovered, Al watches the group from a distance as they continue their work in the courtyard. Inspired by the people who saved him, Al decided right then that he wanted to become a pharmacist just like them. His sole motivation became the desire to help as many people as possible, just as he had been helped. He views his work with the snake collector as his way of giving back to the organization that rescued him. With a resolute expression, he declares that saving others is his true dream. Al humbly adds that whether he is actually skilled is secondary to the fact that so many people still need help. Riefel feels a pang of shame, comparing his noble dream to her own family-driven reasons for becoming a pharmacist. She silently vows to become a healer who is truly worthy of standing alongside the snake collector. Despite her resolve, she inwardly questions if she actually belongs among such dedicated people. She worries that her hidden past and the way she involved others might make her undeserving of her place. Al notices her distress and reaches out to gently take her hand. He tells her that even if she carries heavy regrets from her past, her actions define her. He points out that she consistently risks herself to provide aid to those who are wounded. Al reminds her that she is always the first to extend a helping hand to anyone in distress. He praises her for her resilience, noting that she never lets go of her kind smile even in difficult times. Riefel looks at him with wide eyes, moved by his sincere and comforting words. He warmly affirms that the compassionate person he sees before him is the only Lady Riefel he knows. Al explains that a true pharmacist only needs a heart that wishes to save others. He concludes that her original reasons for starting don't matter as long as saving people remains her first priority. Riefel reflects on Al's validation that her path was never wrong as his words begin to seep naturally into her heart. Watching her, Al expresses a deep wish for Riefel to finally feel proud of herself for all she has accomplished. Sensing his hand on her, Riefel feels a sudden rhythmic thumping in her chest as his comforting voice washes over her. Lost in the moment, She finds herself wanting to stay there forever just to listen to the soothing sound of his voice. The spell is broken when Al calls out to her, and a flustered Riefel suddenly claims she feels incredibly sleepy to hide her blushing face. Panicked and overwhelmed, she stutter steps away from Al while trying to make a hasty and graceful exit. Al warns her to be careful not to trip in the dark as she frantically thanks him and bids him a hurried goodnight. Riefel makes her way through the grand, sun-drenched halls of the mansion while reflecting on the intensity of the encounter. Riefel leans against a cold stone pillar, clutching her chest as she tries to steady her racing heart and cooling her flushed cheeks. Breathless and wide-eyed, she looks up with a dazed expression as she processes the weight of the moment she just shared with Al. Al's past words echo in her mind, reminding her that regardless of the cause, she became a pharmacist whose first duty was to save others. He firmly reiterates that her chosen path was never a mistake, a sentiment Riefel desperately hopes is the truth. Standing together in the morning light, Al looks into her eyes and gently encourages her to be proud of the person she has become. Riefel wakes up in her bed as the morning birds chirp, looking contemplative while the first light of dawn fills the room. Tia happily brushes Riefel's smooth, long hair, humming to herself and noting how wonderfully soft it feels to the touch. Tia mentions that today is the day they visit Count Leol's pharmacy and asks Riefel what her former colleagues were like. Riefel looks back on a memory of her former associates, admitting that while they did their jobs well, they never truly got along. She recalls with a tinge of sadness how her unique recipes and meticulous methods, like collecting morning dew, were never acknowledged by them. Explaining the harsh reality, Riefel notes that as a woman and an aristocrat in a male-dominated field, she was never fully accepted. Tia finishes the hair styling with a flourish, proudly declaring that her work is finally done. Tia shifts the conversation with a sparkle in her eye, bringing up the fact that Riefel and Al were together late last night. Describing the scene as captivating, Tia gushes about the great atmosphere between them while a shocked Riefel asks if she was watching. Riefel tries to hide her embarrassment by smiling and calling Al an admirable person and a truly wonderful friend. Tia observes that it is blindingly obvious how deeply Al cares for Riefel, regardless of how Riefel labels their bond. Riefel reacts with exaggerated shock, her face contorting into a comedic mask of panic at Tia's suggestive implications. Riefel insists that Al is simply a dear friend who inspires her to work harder as a pharmacist, while Tia looks on with pure skepticism. Despite Riefel's insistence that they are just friends, Tia remains unconvinced and quietly ponders the true nature of their relationship. Al enters the room and greets both women warmly, interrupting their morning conversation with a pleasant smile. Riefel asks if it is already time to depart, but Al reveals he has a special gift he would like to give her first. Riefel looks on with genuine surprise and anticipation, wondering what Al could possibly be presenting to her. Riefel stands transformed, dressed in an exquisite and highly detailed new outfit that radiates elegance. Tia exclaims how lovely Riefel looks in the gathering of snakes robe, a garment of immense prestige and beauty. Al watches her with a satisfied smile, glad that she likes the magnificent robe which makes Riefel feel as if she is in a dream. Riefel gazes forward with a soft, blushing expression, clearly moved by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. She reflects on Al's constant kindness and how he always takes such good care of her, calling him an irreplaceable friend. Despite her growing feelings, Riefel tells herself she doesn't want to do anything to ruin their current, comfortable relationship. They are interrupted by a man who greets the Prince of Pharmacology, thanking him profusely for coming to visit. The man turns his attention to Riefel, acting surprisingly delighted to see her and greeting her with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. He heaps praise upon her, claiming he always knew she was a talented apothecary and noting that the gathering of snakes robe is exactly what he expected of her. Riefel is taken aback by the sudden change in his personality, finding his endless praise to be honestly quite creepy. She privately wonders if the slap she gave him previously somehow awakened strange masochistic tendencies within him. Shifting to business, Al asks where Ewald the apothecary is, stating they need to resolve the ongoing recipe issue immediately. The man explains that Ewald has mysteriously disappeared and that he has already sent his servants out to search for him. He worries aloud that the scandal will ruin not just the store's business, but also the entire reputation of his family. Riefel and El stand together in the pharmacy, processing the news of Ewald's sudden flight as the gravity of the situation sinks in. Al suggests that if Ewald isn't found soon, they may have no choice but to request the official cooperation of the snake gathering. They arrive at the pharmacy located next to Count Leol's mansion, preparing to investigate the recipe for themselves. Riafel enters the building with a heavy heart, noting that this is the very first time she has returned since her engagement was broken off. Inside, the staff notices their arrival and asks Sir Aaron if there is anything they can help him with. A hostile voice suddenly rings out, demanding to know how Riafel dares to show her face in the pharmacy again. A new chapter unfolds with the question of whether Riafel's endeavors are merely another noblewoman's hobby. A nobleman gently addresses Lady Riafel, his calm demeanor contrasting with her surprised expression. He reassures her with firm kindness, urging her never to forget that they are standing by her side at this very moment. Amidst an investigation into inferior products, the nobleman demands that her original recipes be gathered immediately. The gravity of the situation escalates as he reveals this is a direct request from the mysterious Gathering of Snakes organization. Riafel reacts with shock to the organization's name but ultimately asks for cooperation, receiving an enthusiastic "of course" in return. The scene shifts as the group prepares to dive into the records provided for their review. A massive, staggering stack of Riafel's remaining recipes is presented, representing the entirety of her work kept in the store. Riafel and her maids stand overwhelmed by the sheer volume of documents, realizing the monumental task of sorting through them all. Examining the papers, Riafel is horrified to find that vital sections of her recipes have been intentionally blacked out in numerous places. She confronts the pharmacists, demanding to know why they erased the root of the ranunculation from her formula. The pharmacists hesitate, caught off guard by her immediate identification of the missing components. The hooded men dismissively claim the extra ingredients were unnecessary, while the maid trembles in the background. They mock the inclusion of morning dew, arrogantly questioning why anyone would bother with what they perceive as just water. Riafel reflects bitterly on how she sacrificed her sleep and worked tirelessly at the pharmacy just to write these recipes down. She is devastated to be treated with such contempt, especially since they clearly don't understand that ranunculation roots are delicate and dissolve quickly. Overwhelmed by the stress of the confrontation, Riafel begins to hallucinate, wondering if the pot before her is actually glowing. The noblewoman snaps back, shouting that these people have no right to speak after tinkering with and selling other people's stolen recipes. The pharmacists sneer and hide behind their hoods, mockingly claiming it was a mere fluke that Riafel ever created a successful potion. They attempt to belittle her further, cruelly stating there is no way a little girl like her could ever be considered special. The pharmacists continue their dismissal, insisting that it is simply weird to think her strange methods actually make the medicine work. The nobleman intervenes, looking down at the documents and sternly asking if they had a vague idea of the truth all along. He narrows his eyes, accusing them of ignoring Riafel's genius and choosing to remake the recipes incorrectly instead. He proclaims that Lady Riafel possesses a great talent for creating new medicines that they could never hope to understand. The nobleman further asserts that no pharmacist in the entire world can possibly match her unique abilities. A heavy silence falls over the room as he prepares to reveal the supernatural source of her incredible skill. He shocks everyone by revealing that Riafel is blessed with the divine protection of holy medicine. The pharmacy staff and Riafel herself are left stunned, struggling to grasp the exact meaning of such a legendary blessing. He explains that knowledge of holy medicine is rare because the former king was a skeptic who suppressed its existence. The king went so far as to erase all references to protection from official documents to maintain his disbelief. Consequently, almost no one in the country is aware of what protection actually entails or how it functions. The nobleman pauses, his serious gaze fixed on the pharmacists as the weight of his revelation settles. Riafel notices that Count Leol and the other senior pharmacists seem to have known about this hidden truth all along. One of the men tries to deflect, claiming he only read about it in a foreign book that he conveniently threw away before his engagement. The nobleman ignores the excuses, moving on to explain that there are actually several different types of this divine protection. He details how some protections allow a host to eliminate lethal poisons or heal patients through simple physical touch or their own blood. He notes that even Lady Fatch's ability to discern the quality of medicines and poisons is a form of this blessing. Finally, he looks directly at Riafel and reveals that the specific blessing bestowed upon her is called creation. He defines creation as the power to intuitively know the best herb combinations and confections to maximize medicinal effectiveness. Riafel realizes that what she thought were just random ideas were actually flashes of divine intuition guiding her work. The nobleman concludes that the recent failures of the store's medicines are a direct result of the pharmacists changing her perfect recipes. He explains that while the pharmacists thought the changes were minor, they actually dropped the efficacy of the medicine significantly. Pointing an accusing finger, he declares that the decline of the pharmacy is entirely their doing. The pharmacists begin to panic and mumble amongst themselves as the nobleman reveals that even the forest's medicinal herbs are disappearing. He explains that tree spirits, which empower all plant-related things, are responsible for this sudden transformation of ingredients. Those chosen for protection are deeply loved by these spirits, giving them a connection to nature that others lack. He warns that the spirits will not forgive those who have disrespected Lady Riafel and her sacred recipes. Terror grips the pharmacists as they realize that if the tree spirits abandon them, their careers and lives are effectively over. Desperate and arrogant to the end, the lead pharmacist screams that he will simply solve the problem by hiring a more skilled replacement. A sharp, dramatic note as the consequences of their hubris begin to manifest around them. Count Leol cruelly dismisses the extra work involved in his recipes, callously stating he doesn't mind working his fiancée to the bone. The Count's companions push back, insisting he take responsibility for the failed recipe he created in the first place. The group discusses the gravity of their situation, noting that angering tree spirits is a taboo that prevents them from obtaining decent medicine. A close-up reveals a character's eye filled with brewing sorrow and silent contemplation. The weight of the situation hangs heavy as they wonder when the eternal spirits will finally grant them forgiveness. Tensions boil over as the commoners accuse the nobles of always being the ones to take away their livelihoods. A woman confronts the owner, demanding to know if he intends to abandon them after they've spent years fulfilling his unreasonable requests. The pharmacist lashes out in defense, blaming the staff's incompetence for the current disaster. Stricken by the harsh accusation of being incompetent, the workers reel at how poorly they are being treated after years of service. The narrative shifts to the internal ache of losing one's place in the world. A young girl reflects on the painful reality of knowing exactly what that loss feels like. The characters are haunted by the fear of being abandoned so easily, despite their best efforts to belong. She realizes that her current state mirrors the struggles of those standing before her now. A focused close-up captures her eyes as she begins to process the shared pain of the group. She confesses that she was also doing her absolute best just to protect her own place in the world. Riafel stands tall with newfound determination as Al watches her from behind. She admits her tunnel vision in wanting to develop medicine blinded her to the genuine concerns of everyone else. A shot of trembling hands emphasizes the regret over the fuss that wouldn't have happened if responsibility had been taken sooner. Riafel looks back at the hooded pharmacist, realizing she should have approached the group with more empathy. The scene shifts to the faces of the men involved, reflecting the gravity of the mounting consequences. A commoner shouts that it is too late for apologies, as they are the ones who always suffer from the empty, sweet words of nobles. Riafel pleads for a way to convince them, hoping to create a future where everyone can live without such anxiety. She reaches out to the hooded man, bridging the gap between their social classes with a gesture of peace. With a fierce expression, Riafel vowing that next time she will definitely be there to help him. Her eyes shine with sincere tears as she makes her solemn promise to do better. The hooded pharmacists stand in stunned silence as the weight of her sincerity hits them. The man confesses his deep jealousy toward her, noting that she is a noble lady who still possesses the talent of a pharmacist. He explains that pharmacists are often expected to produce results without ever receiving a word of thanks. Despite his resentment, he admits he was always jealous of her unwavering positivity. Overcome with emotion, the pharmacist falls to his knees in a display of total vulnerability. Prostrating himself, he apologizes for excluding her and regrets that he didn't continue improving his medicine for the sake of others. Through heavy sobs, he laments that they had forgotten the simple, fundamental reasons for their work. Riafel moves to comfort the weeping man, showing compassion to her former adversary. Watching from the side, the men note that even if the pharmacists change their minds, the spirits may not be so forgiving. One man teases his companion for becoming so merciless whenever his girl is involved, though the other remains focused on the outcome. A gentle smile spreads across a man's face as he watches Riafel's successful intervention. The group looks on in awe, acknowledging that Lady Riafel is truly a wonderful pharmacist. Lord Alex arrives with a slimy smile, praising Riafel just as expected from a pharmacist of the Gathering of Serpents. The group states they will only deal with the recipe, causing Alex to desperately ask if she will also help restore his family's honor. Riefel bluntly tells him to see to his own honor himself, leaving him completely speechless. Alex is left stuttering in shock as his attempts to ride her coattails are utterly shut down. Professor Sabru pops in to lecture the readers that honor is something you restore, not something that is simply returned. Riefel directs the others to wait at the Count's estate while she stays to grasp the true situation at the shop. A man admits that he would honestly prefer to stay by her side as well. The group reflects on the fact that nothing will change if Count Leol simply continues to rely on Lady Riefel's kindness. Riefel expresses her guilt over having to rely so heavily on Al to resolve the conflict. Tia reassures Riefel that she has nothing to worry about since the current mess was entirely the noble's fault to begin with. Riefel remains somber, noting that her own hard times don't change the fact that the medicine was compromised. She acknowledges the painful reality that many people suffered because of the mistakes made. Looking off into the distance, Riefel concludes that she finally understands everything they were saying much better now. The apothecary's philosophy holds that medicine and poison are merely two sides of the same coin, capable of bringing immense suffering when fueled by ill will. Conversely, when administered with genuine goodwill, these same substances can become a person's absolute salvation. Riefel reflects on the sacred duty of apothecaries to serve as guideposts, ensuring that powerful medicines are always utilized correctly and ethically. A sudden, sharp call for Tia breaks the contemplative silence of the moment. Resolving to value her own unique recipes more deeply from now on, Riefel receives firm agreement from her companion. A pair of feet move quickly across the grassy terrain as the scene shifts to the mansion's exterior. Startled by a sudden movement in the brush, Riefel pauses and looks back in confusion. Lady Riefel explains to an anxious Tia that she caught a glimpse of a dark figure lurking nearby, suspecting something is amiss. While Tia suggests it might just be a gardener, Riefel is unsettled by how the individuals seem to be intentionally avoiding detection. Overcoming her initial hesitation, Riefel decides to follow the suspicious figure despite the potential risks. Riefel instructs Tia to go find Al for backup while she courageously pursues the intruder alone. Tia cries out in protest as her lady disappears into the foliage. Driven by a sense of justice, Riefel realizes she cannot simply overlook a crime happening right before her eyes, even if the mansion itself doesn't concern her. Approaching the source of the noise, she overhears familiar voices whispering in the distance. Peering from behind a tree, Riefel is shocked to find Rouge meeting secretly with a mysterious partner in this deserted location. Rouge scolds her companion for disappearing, mentioning that Lord Aaron has been frantically searching for them all morning. The hidden man expresses how deeply lonely he felt while they were apart, unable to see Rouge. He reaches out tenderly, asking to get a better look at her face. From her hiding spot, a flustered Riefel witnesses the two sharing an intimate, romantic moment. The man, identified as Ewald, praises Rouge for her sweet words as their tryst continues. Rouge declares her passionate love for Ewald, completely unaware they are being watched. Riefel's internal scream of disbelief echoes the shocking nature of this forbidden discovery. Horrified, Riefel realizes that her own sister is engaged in a secret lover's tryst with none other than Ewald. She looks at Ewald with disdain, noting how different and sinister his face appears compared to her previous memories of him. Though she has a mountain of questions, Riefel decides she must confront Rouge first. Stepping out from the shadows, Riefel bluntly asks her sister if she has gained weight, immediately ruining the romantic atmosphere. A tense standoff ensues as Riefel looms over the guilty couple. Rouge's face turns bright red with a mixture of embarrassment and extreme rage at the interruption. Snapping back, Rouge insults her ugly, older sister and demands to know why she is interfering. Seizing the opportunity to eliminate a witness, Rouge orders Ewald to dispose of her sister right then and there while no one is watching. Riefel's eyes widen in terror as she notices a dangerous black magic stone in Ewald's possession. Ewald offers a mock apology to his former colleague, claiming it saddens him to have to do this. With a cruel smirk, Ewald activates the stone and commands Riefel to disappear. A massive blast of dark energy erupts, tearing through the garden as Riefel attempts to scramble away. Riefel screams in terror as the chaotic magical forces narrow the gap between her and certain death. She realizes with horror that no one warned her about Ewald wielding the power of a magic stone. Rouge impatiently urges Ewald to stop dawdling and finish the job while he curses the difficulty of controlling the artifact. Observing his panicky and chaotic movements, Riafel hopes she can continue to dodge, though she knows she can't run forever. Ewald gathers a massive, unstable sphere of dark energy, declaring that he has had enough of this chase. Staring directly into the eye of the storm, Riafel prepares herself for the final strike. Just as the attack is unleashed, a brave figure leaps in front of Riafel to protect her. Riafel is moved to tears as she realizes that Tia, Al, and Halbert have all come to her rescue. Fueled by a desperate need to protect her companions, Riafel screams that she won't let them be hurt. Ewald sneers and tells them to just die already, launching another wave of destructive power. Riafel reaches out toward her precious people, her own hidden power beginning to stir in response to the crisis. Her allies look on in shock as a brilliant light begins to emanate from the apothecary. She vows with newfound strength that she will never allow Ewald to harm her friends again. The faces of Ewald, Tia, and Rouge are caught in a moment of pure astonishment as the tide of the battle shifts. Magic vines and petals swirl around Riafel as she stands at the center of a burgeoning spiritual awakening. Panicking at the sudden turn of events, Ewald and Rouge realize they are in over their heads and attempt to flee the scene. Confronted by the vines, a panicked Ewald attempts to flee while shouting that he won't let his captive escape. Entangled in the disgusting growth, Ewald desperately begs for help while the vines tighten their grip. Riafel rushes back to the group and apologizes for running ahead on her own after being asked if she was unharmed. The group gazes at the mysterious foliage, wondering what could have caused such a sudden surge of vines. Riafel looks on with a soft expression as Elle suggests that a powerful tree spirit likely intervened to save them. They observe shimmering particles of light, realizing this is the divine protection bestowed by the spirits. Marveling at the sheer scale of the spirit's power, Riafel feels deep gratitude for being saved once again. Questioning Ewald's motives, the group wonders why he would return to the mansion and what he was doing in such a secluded place. Moving closer, Riafel whispers a private explanation into Ael's ear while the others watch in curiosity. A young woman with freckles and a lavish dress sits on the ground, looking disheveled and annoyed. The woman, identified as Lady Rouge, snaps her head around in shock when she is suddenly addressed. Al begins a sudden interrogation, asking Rouge about her acquaintance with the pharmacist Ewald. Maintaining a polite demeanor, Al introduces himself as a pharmacist and a close friend of Lady Riafel. Rouge reacts with suspicion, her eyes narrowing as she processes the claim that this man is her sister's friend. Rouge immediately insults the group, mocking them as plain, and claiming they are the perfect match for her gloomy, older sister. Observing Rouge's boastful attitude and sturdier physique, Al and the others quietly question if she is truly Riafel's sister. Fed up with the insults, Riafel bluntly points out that Rouge has gained weight and tells her to stop speaking ill of her friends. Enraged by the comment, Rouge accuses Riafel of being rude and takes offense at being called fat. Riafel questions her sister's health, asking if she is eating vegetables or following any sort of proper diet. Rouge stubbornly defends herself, claiming she hates vegetables and relies entirely on supplements instead. The focus shifts back to the primary mystery as the group demands to know why Rouge was meeting with Ewald. Nervously fiddling with the gem on her dress, Rouge hesitates as she tries to come up with a believable answer. Rouge spins a lie, claiming Ewald suddenly appeared and threatened her for money so he could escape. Putting on a performance of fear, Rouge cries out to Lord Aaron and insists she was absolutely terrified. Lord Aaron turns to Riafel with a stern expression, asking if her sister's story is actually the truth. Riafel looks down with a bead of sweat on her face, unable to agree with her sister's blatant fabrication. Lord Aaron realizes the deception, noting that it seemed more like Rouge was actually waiting for Ewald to arrive. I'll suggest they first need to sort out the situation while Rouge desperately tries to maintain her lie to Aaron. Aaron instructs Riafel and Tia to return to the Van Helger estate, a name that causes Rouge to react with shock. Rouge is stunned to learn her sister is under the care of someone as prestigious as a Van Helger. Tia tells Rouge to stop her outburst, noting that Riafel has her own complex situation to deal with. Rouge continues her tantrum, calling Aaron disgusting for taking her sister's side instead of hers. Rouge remains indignant, unable to believe that anyone would actually listen to Riafel's opinion over her own. As the group prepares to leave, Rouge is reminded that Riafel is still her sister despite her previous orders to forget her. While traveling in the carriage, the companions remark that Riafel's little sister is certainly quite something, in more ways than one. A flashback shows a younger, sparkling Rouge being praised by those around her for her loveliness. Promised a great future in high society, a young Rouge confidently declares her intention to marry a prince. Rouge grew up believing that her adorability was her greatest asset and that it would get her anything she wanted. In the Calaster family, the absolute rule was that a noblewoman's value was determined entirely by her cuteness. Because of these family values, the cute Rouge held absolute importance while the plain Riafel was relegated to the shadows. Riafel spent her life trying to cover for Rouge's shameless behavior and her refusal to study or act appropriately. Spoiled by her own beauty, Rouge refused to exercise and rejected vegetables, choosing to rely on supplements to maintain herself. Riafel hides her face in her hands, lamenting that all her past effort to protect and guide her sister was for nothing. Riafel wonders if the Count even minds that Rouge's physique has changed so drastically from her childhood. She shudders at the thought that Rouge's current appearance might actually be the Count's specific preference. Attempting to move on, Riafel decides there is nothing more she can do by constantly worrying about her sister's choices. Riafel leaves the rest up to fate, wishing her little sister the best of luck in her own way. Despite her claims of being abducted, the truth is revealed that Rouge was secretly meeting with the man who caused the uproar. Rouge continues her act, tearfully insisting that she resisted with all her might when Ewald tried to take her. Lord Aaron stands in his study, holding a letter with a shocked expression as he looks over a pile of correspondence. A father's voice thunders with disappointment as he castigates his foolish son for dragging the house of Leol through the mud. Reeling from the verbal blow, the son falls to the floor with a heavy thud while cursing his miserable luck. Reflecting on his abandonment of Riafel, the man laments that making Rouge his fiancé was the moment his life began to spiral into ruin. A memory surfaces of a simpler time, showing a group of people gathered together in a moment of apparent normalcy. He finally realizes that the plain girl he thought was only capable of making medicine was actually the one supporting him all along. The weight of his mistake grows as he recalls that Riafel is a prestigious member of the Gathering of Serpents, who earned the trust of the Prince of Pharmacology. Furthermore, he acknowledges her deep-seated connections within the highest ranks of the country's social hierarchy. Lost in a daze of regret, he stares blankly as the painful truth finally settles into his mind. He envisions a captive Riafel surrounded by roses, desperately wishing for her return to save himself and the local apothecaries. Dark thoughts begin to consume him as he admits things with Rouge are failing, leading him to wish she would simply disappear. Startled by the sound of his own name, he tries to shake off his murderous impulses and wonders how he could have such foolish thoughts. Rouge suddenly appears and clings to him, whining about how lonely and unsafe she felt during his absence. The man stares at her in shock, unable to ignore a jarring question that suddenly pierces his mind. Looking at his fiancée with newfound revulsion, he notices how disgustingly fat she has become, comparing her to a chocolate-loaded cake. He recalls her constant rejection of vegetables in favor of heavy meat dishes and desserts covered in thick cream. Disgust turns to judgment as he realizes she abandoned exercise and relied solely on supplements, a lifestyle incompatible with maintaining beauty. Standing before him, the bloated Rouge holds up a necklace while he gazes up at her with a look of pure exhaustion. He admits to himself that Rouge had grown fat long ago, but he had intentionally chosen to look away from the truth. His internal monologue continues as he acknowledges his long-standing denial regarding her physical transformation. The tense moment is interrupted by a servant bearing urgent news and a letter from the palace requiring his immediate presence. His blood runs cold upon learning that the sudden summons was sent by the formidable Duke van Helger. The Duke offers a cold apology for the sudden summons as the scene shifts to the imposing gates of the palace. He is informed that a meeting with Ewald has been granted and that his presence is required as the man's former employer. With a submissive bow, the man accepts the command while a dark-haired official looks on with an unreadable expression. Behind iron bars, Ewald mocks the gathered nobles by suggesting they must have far too much free time. The official demands to hear every detail regarding the harm caused by the Badiria herb to ensure the full extent of the crime is revealed. Resigned to his fate, Ewald plans to drag both the Count and Rouge down to hell with him. The prisoner declares with a chilling smile that he will go to the gallows in good spirits if his revenge is successful. Shocked by the mention of the gallows, the man stares through the bars while the official remains stoic. He tries to rationalize the situation, thinking that recommending a herb tea shouldn't be a crime worthy of a death sentence. A suspicion arises that perhaps one of the affected nobles is using their immense power to push for this extreme punishment. The official presses the prisoner to explain why. In the first place, he was recommending the Bideria herbs specifically to women. Ewald sighs and decides to stop keeping quiet, knowing the truth will eventually come to light anyway. He reveals the shocking truth. Lady Rouge herself had begged him to do something about the women she found annoying. He explains that she clung to him so pitifully that he believed there was a serious reason behind her request. A dark smirk plays on the prisoner's face as he prepares to reveal the petty motives behind the poisoning. Ewald details a list of shallow grievances, from a woman being scolded at a tea party to someone looking better in a red dress. The man is left speechless and horrified that someone could be poisoned for such incredibly shallow reasons. As Ewald breaks into hysterical laughter, the official berates him for being a messed-up human being for participating in such a ridiculous scheme. Ewald admits with a sly grin that he simply found the whole situation to be quite interesting. Beyond mere amusement, he confesses that he went along with Rouge's request because it could be useful for his real job. The official acknowledges the hidden motive before turning his attention back to the disgraced Count Leal. Ewald shifts the topic with a lewd taunt, questioning the Count's competence in matters of nighttime etiquette. He reveals that Rouge complained about the Count being passive in bed and told him it was a pain to pretend to enjoy it. The Count stammers in disbelief as the prisoner mocks him for being a total waste. Ewald continues his taunting, claiming that Rouge is actually amazing when treated correctly by a real man. Enraged, the Count accuses him of using both Rouge's influence and her body, but Ewald tells him not to get the wrong idea. The final blow comes when Ewald reveals that plenty of apothecaries and servants also had relations with Rouge. He sneers at the Count, noting that the only person who didn't know about her rampant infidelity was the Count himself. The prisoner laughs in the Count's face, mocking how the high and mighty noble has been reduced to such a pathetic state. Peering through the iron bars of a cell, a witness observes the fallout of Lady Rouge's relationships as the gravity of the situation begins to settle. Ewald sits bound and defeated while a cold interrogator demands to know the true nature of his real job. The pharmacy is seized and placed under the management of the Gathering of Serpents, while Ewald is ordered to submit his ledgers and remain under house arrest. Overwhelmed by the sudden ruin of his life, the victim despairs over how things could have possibly spiraled so far out of control. Lord Aaron stands in shock, realizing that if Ewald's claims are true, his entire future and reputation are in jeopardy. Aaron's heart hardens as he realizes his supposedly pure and lovely fiancée has been exposed as an appallingly vile woman. An urgent letter arrives from Count Notre, sparking a moment of intense realization and frantic energy. The shop's staff reacts with utter disbelief to the news that Count Notre is offering aid funds for the apothecaries under specific conditions. Doubts linger as they wonder why Lady Katerina influenced the reluctant Count to send such a generous offer at this late hour. A vision of Lady Katerina's serene face appears as she emphasizes the noble mission of saving lives that all apothecaries hold. Her compassionate smile radiates a sense of duty, insisting that such honorable people cannot be abandoned in their time of need. Guilt washes over the staff as they realize she is helping them despite the fact that their shop's actions endangered lives. Regret strikes hard when one man recalls with shame that he once had the audacity to call such a saintly person a pig. Clutching the letter, Aaron prepares to meet the conditions to repay the Countess's unexpected kindness. Aaron marches through the mansion with a heavy, purposeful stride that echoes through the halls. Bursting into the room, Aaron screams at a startled Rouge to hand over the necklace immediately. Rouge stammering in confusion, Aaron explains that returning the necklace she took for the antidote is the only way to secure the Count's support. Aaron dismisses her hesitation, pointing out she seemed bored with the jewelry anyway and shouldn't mind parting with it. Rouge drops a bombshell, casually revealing that the necklace is no longer inside the mansion. Aaron freezes in a state of pure, sweaty shock as his brain struggles to process her words. Rouge explains that she had a maid polish it because it was dirty, but a crack suddenly appeared on the gem. The memory of the damage haunts the moment, suggesting the necklace was ruined during its time in her care. Claiming the broken jewelry gave her an ominous feeling, Rouge admits she had no intention of wearing the cursed item again. Horrified, Aaron begins to ask the question he dreads most, fearing she did the unthinkable and threw it away. Rouge reveals her absurd solution. She buried the precious necklace somewhere in the garden. Aaron explodes in fury, mocking her for thinking that planting sapphires would make new ones grow while she defends her choice to hide it. When pressed for the exact location, Rouge vaguely remembers burying it near some red flowers. Aaron stands in stunned silence as the difficulty of the task ahead begins to sink in. The irony hits like a physical blow when Erin reminds her that the entire garden is full of nothing but red flowers because she hated white ones. Erin screams for the gardener and orders everyone in the mansion to mobilize and dig up every single inch of soil immediately. Rouge protests the destruction of her garden, seemingly oblivious to the dire consequences of her actions. She callously argues that the support money is only for the apothecaries and therefore doesn't concern her. Rouge declares that if the money isn't for them personally, then they don't need it at all. Erin seethes with rage, gritting his teeth and begging her to stay quiet because there is no other way to save their reputation. Offended, Rouge accuses Erin of siding with her sister and making everything seem like her fault. Erin despairs over the falling reputation of the Liol family, but Rouge heartlessly declares she hates him and doesn't care. Rouge continues her tirade, blaming Erin for everything while refusing to take any responsibility for the crisis. The tension reaches a breaking point as the physical and emotional weight of the confrontation peaks. In a fit of uncontrollable rage, Erin strikes Rouge, sending her reeling from the force of the blow. Rouge stumbles back in shock and pain, unable to believe that the man who once adored her has turned so violent. Erin bellows that this entire disaster is her fault while Rouge clutches her face in terror. Rouge attempts to defend herself by asking if she is less important than a useless apothecary, but her vanity only fuels his anger. Erin snarls in disgust, telling her to look in a mirror before she ever dares to call herself cute again. Refusing to listen to any more excuses, Erin grabs her and prepares to drag her away. Rouge screams that she might be bleeding and begs him to let go, but Erin ignores her cries of pain. Erin cruelly calls her a noisy, squealing pig and mocks her weight, telling her that bleeding might actually help her lose some. A final cry of distress echoes as Rouge is manhandled through the estate. Erin throws her into a dark, mysterious room and tells her she will be staying there quietly for a while. Left alone and trembling, Rouge sobs in the darkness as the physical pain of the encounter lingers. Dragged down to her new reality, Rouge pleads with Erin to tell her he's joking, but the door remains shut. As the door slams shut, a young woman collapses in a heap against the frame, trapped while an intruder demands entry. The aggressor sneers through the wood, calling her a pig and asserting that he has no time to deal with her pathetic resistance. Stepping away from the imposing estate, a young man smugly concludes that nothing will stand in his way for a while. Gasping for breath and sweating profusely, he pushes himself to run as fast as possible to complete his mission. Driven by a singular, desperate focus, he mutters to himself that he must find the necklace at any cost. In a sudden shift to a brighter atmosphere, a voice calls out to Tia that it is finally time for lunch. Riafel breathes a sigh of relief that Tia is safe, reflecting on the days that have passed since they fled the Liol estate. Peace has finally returned as they successfully reopen their shop following their difficult parting with Al. Riafel's stomach growls loudly as she explains that the stamina required for making medicine is far greater than most people realize. The table is spread with a delicious meal of roasted venison sandwiches and a hearty, veggie-packed minestrone. Tia takes a large, satisfying bite of the sandwich, her face lighting up with the joy of a good meal. She exclaims that the venison provided by the village chief is absolutely unparalleled in flavor. Heart icons surround Tia as she praises Riafel's amazing minestrone, savoring every spoonful. While enjoying her meal, Tia's thoughts drift back to Al, wishing he could be there to share the food with them. Newspaper headlines detail the downfall of Count Liol, whose unauthorized use of recipes has brought the wrath of spirits and caused medicine quality to plummet. The Asgrand Pharmacists Association finally intervenes as health issues from Bideria grass spread among the noblewomen. Tia acknowledges that Al is currently busy working tirelessly for the sake of the kingdom's pharmacists. Instead of returning to the village, Al has remained at the Duke's estate to visit Erin's pharmacy every single day. Tia resolves that once the current chaos calms down, she must find a way to properly thank him for everything. A sudden clack at the door interrupts her thoughts, and Tia looks up in surprise to see who has arrived. Halbert stands at the entrance with a bright grin, holding up a letter and asking the young lady how she has been. Tia beams with excitement as she accepts the correspondence, though Halbert explains Al was too busy to deliver it himself. Riafel offers Halbert tea and some of her homemade lunch while he prepares to dig into the meal. As tea is poured into a delicate cup, the narrative shifts toward the mystery of a hidden treasure. Al's letter reveals that Count Liol's servants have been desperately digging up the garden every night once everyone is asleep. Working in the dead of night, the staff uses shovels to move earth as quietly as possible to avoid detection. The Count is apparently clinging to a legend that a vast treasure lies buried somewhere within his estate's gardens. Al explains that the Count hopes to find this wealth to compensate the pharmacists he has wronged. Despite the frantic digging, the existence of such a legendary treasure remains highly questionable. Halbert explains that Al has taken over the pharmacy's authority while the Count's father handles the territory management. With the Count stripped of his power and duties, he has nothing left to do but chase pathetic rumors. The group laughs at the absurdity, joking that the Count looks like he's trying to unearth a hidden corpse or a secret he's ashamed of. Tia expresses her hope that the Count's desperate business doesn't end up getting in Al's way. Halbert explains he cannot stay long because he acts as Al's guard and the only person who can stop him from overworking. Al has become a complete workaholic, having gone 3 straight days without sleep while focused entirely on his tasks. Tia and Riafel wave goodbye, asking Halbert to take good care of Al as he heads back to his post. Looking out at the scenery, Tia sighs as she realizes just how rough Al has it right now. Her concern grows as she wonders if he is even finding the time to eat properly amidst his busy schedule. Tia and Riafel head back into the fields, surrounded by flowers and greenery as they continue their work. Riafel notes that they have picked a much larger harvest than usual, allowing them to experiment with new mixes. Tia tells herself that moping won't help and decides to focus on what she can do in her own way. Examining the plants, she notes with a smile that they have ripened into a beautiful, vibrant color. She plans to turn the refreshing leaves into throat lozenges by adding sugar and fruit juice so children can take them easily. Considering different flavors, Tia ponders whether orange, grape, or local berries would pair best with the candy. Riafel suggests using apples, noting that the ones being sold this season are exceptionally sweet. Agreeing that apples would provide a gentle taste with low acidity, they decide to stop by the market on their way home. Tia suddenly pauses, her eyes widening as she spots something unusual hanging from the vegetation. A strange, large spherical object made of tangled vines or roots hangs suspended in the air. She stares in confusion, questioning what this mysterious white root could be. To her shock, the root suddenly wilts in her hands, revealing a strange, hollow interior. Riafel and Tia stare in stunned silence, their faces pale as they process a shocking revelation. Tia holds up an ornate, jewel-encrusted necklace, her voice trembling as she asks what the object could possibly be. An elderly man examines the piece, noting that the necklace was found wrapped tightly within a cluster of forest roots. He speculates that the discovery might be the work of a spirit, wondering aloud about the supernatural origins of the find. Riafel reacts with a start, recalling a passage from a book she once read regarding the mysterious habits of spirits. The group discusses how spirits are drawn to beautiful things like minerals and flowers, yet will hide them away if an impure heart tries to claim them. Riafel fixates on the words, wicked heart, and impure, her expression growing troubled as she ponders the moral implications. The elder recounts a legend about a band of thieves who once robbed a jeweler and attempted to escape with a mountain of gems. To the thieves' horror, every single stolen piece vanished into thin air before they could reach their destination. He adds that those very jewels were later discovered in a distant forest, prompting a cry of shock from the girls. Tia suddenly realizes with mounting dread that the central jewel of the necklace she is holding has developed a crack. She tearfully explains that she was only trying to wipe away the dust and food scraps stuck to the surface. While Tia wails an apology, Riafel notices a sweet smell and realizes the damage was likely there from the beginning. Riafel reassures Tia that a crack that's significant couldn't have come from simple cleaning while dark thoughts of organ trafficking and compensation flicker through her mind. Riafel pauses to wonder why such a magnificent treasure was treated so roughly, covered in grime and left with a broken stone. As she experiences a nagging sense of déjà vu regarding the necklace, a mysterious silhouette appears in the doorway. Mira, an elegant lady from the village outskirts, surprises the group by commenting on the unusual gathering of 3 beautiful ladies. Mira smiles warmly and apologizes for startling them, hoping that everyone in the room has been doing well. The elder greets Mira, jokingly remarking that he considers himself more handsome than beautiful despite her inclusive compliment. He notes that while Mira looks youthful, she is surprisingly around the same age as the village chief. Mira turns her attention to Riafel, commenting on her vivid, ocean-colored hair and the feeling that they have met before. Noticing the dirty jewelry, Mira offers to pretty up the piece, despite Tia's protests that they don't yet know the owner. The elder encourages Riafel to entrust the task to Mira, calling her a true professional. He reveals that Mira was once a jeweler and gem artisan in her youth, prompting a playful giggle from the lady. Mira promises to take full responsibility for the item, leaving Tia and Riafel standing in wide-eyed amazement. 2 days pass following the appearance of their unexpected savior and her offer to help. The girls are ecstatic to see the necklace returned, as it now looks like an entirely different, pristine piece of art. Mira expresses her happiness at being able to talk to jewels, again while Riafel marvels that even the tiniest bit of grime is gone. Despite the expert cleaning, Tia points out that the large, prominent crack in the gem remains. Mira explains that her manual skills have reached their limit and suggests they seek the final touch from the moon spirit. Riafel is baffled by the mention of a moon spirit providing the final touch to a physical object. Mira invites both girls to her home that night, promising to show them something truly special under the moonlight. Riafel and Tia arrive at Mira's residence and are welcomed inside by her son. As midnight approaches, Mira instructs them to turn off the lights to prepare for the spirit's arrival. A brilliant, celestial light suddenly floods the room, causing Riafel to gasp in sheer wonder. Mira explains that on nights of the full moon, the moon spirit possesses the power to heal damaged jewels. Riafel asks if Mira possesses the spirit's blessing, but Mira only offers a cryptic smile and says, "Who can say?" Gazing toward the window, Mira simply states that her actions stem from her profound love for jewels. Mira hands the restored necklace back to Riafel, who is overcome with gratitude for the woman's help. The sight of the necklace triggers a memory for Mira, reminding her of a time long ago when she repaired this very same jewel. Mira finds it strange that the necklace is here, noting that it is supposed to be in the possession of the Not-Ray family. Tia and Riafel are shocked to learn Mira has connections to the high-ranking Not-Ray family. Mira confirms she once received a professional request from them to repair a specific treasure. Mira reveals the necklace is a Not-Ray family heirloom that was damaged during a serious accident involving a noble lady. Although the lady escaped unharmed, the necklace was broken as if it had served as a shield to protect her. Mira notes the Countess would never treat such a treasure poorly, yet recalls that she didn't mention the necklace during their recent meeting. Riafel ponders the deepening mystery of the necklace's owner and the strange circumstances surrounding its discovery. Troubled by the damage to the jewelry and its presence in the forest, she admits that the full truth remains unclear. Steeling her resolve, Riafel makes a firm decision regarding her next course of action. She determines to report the find to Duke Van Helger and ensure the necklace is returned to Count Notre's family. Riafel admits it pains her to leave her shop so soon after returning, but she trusts the Duke's superior knowledge in such sensitive matters. Tia enthusiastically encourages Riafel to go, promising to take full responsibility for managing the store in her absence. Overwhelmed by her friend's support, Riafel is moved by how much Tia has grown as a person. Riafel explains to Mira that returning the necklace to Count Not-Ray is the right choice, sensing that the jewel itself longs to go home. Looking back, Riafel notes that she never imagined this single decision would eventually trigger such a massive uproar. At the time, she was completely unaware of the challenges that were about to come. Duke Van Helger sends a letter expressing his pleasure at hearing from Lady Riafel and his relief that she is doing well. The Duke confirms he has already spoken to Count Not-Ray about the necklace discovered in the forest while Riafel organizes her medicinal supplies. 2 days later, Riafel prepares to travel to the Not-Ray estate alongside a messenger sent by the Duke. Riafel offers a gentle smile, telling herself not to worry about the journey ahead. She vows to definitely return the shimmering jewelry to its rightful owner. Riafel steps out of her shop, ready to begin her mission to the estate. Someone calls out to Lady Riafel, catching her attention as she prepares to depart. News arrives that the Duke's messenger has reached the outskirts of the village. Riafel asks the village chief and Tia to look after the shop, while the chief warns her to be careful on her way. Riafel fussily reminds Tia to eat properly and follow the left-behind recipes, prompting an amused response from her friend. Tia waves goodbye, telling Lady Riafel to make sure she doesn't overwork herself during the trip. Spotting the approaching vehicle, Tia points out that the carriage must be the one sent for them. Riafel watches the horse-drawn carriage arrive, reflecting once more on how much Tia has matured. Riafel's eyes widen as she gets a closer look at the person arriving with the carriage. To Riafel's absolute shock, the person accompanying the Duke's carriage is none other than Mr. Al. Al explains with a smile that the Duke of Van Helger personally asked him to accompany her on the mission. Riafel worries if Al is taking on too much work, though he playfully reminds her he isn't just an errand boy. Al nonchalantly dismisses her concerns, claiming he will manage his workload somehow. Riafel remains skeptical, suspecting that Al definitely forced his way into this assignment just to see her. Al pauses, looking slightly sheepish as he prepares to make a confession. With a faint blush, Al admits that he might have told a small lie regarding his orders. He confesses that he was actually the one who asked the Duke to let him accompany her because he truly wanted to see her face. Riafel reacts with a visible start, her heart racing at Al's sudden and honest admission. Al gazes at her warmly, expressing his sincere relief at seeing her looking so healthy. A flustered Riafel admits she has also been wondering how he was doing and is happy they could meet. Al thanks her, softly stating that seeing her smile always gives him the strength he needs. Realizing he pushed through his exhaustion just to be there, Riafel feels a deep sense of appreciation. Al reminds her that Count Notre is waiting and they shouldn't spend too much time standing around talking. Riafel finally prepares to board the carriage and head toward her destination. Tia shouts out a final promise to protect the shop while Riafel is away. Once settled inside the carriage, Al speaks up to change the subject. He presents a basket of fresh walnut bread, noting how nice it smells. Al explains that he baked the bread himself so they could enjoy a meal together since it is around lunchtime. Riafel is touched by the gesture and gladly accepts the offer of homemade food. Upon taking a bite, Riafel is delighted to find the bread chewy, fragrant, and absolutely delicious. In return, Riafel reveals she brought some sweets specifically for Mr. Halbert. Al freezes in mid-bite, his expression going blank at the mention of sweets for his colleague. Sensing the sudden tension, a panicked Riafel quickly clarifies that she made plenty for Al as well. Al recovers from his momentary jealousy and curiously asks what kind of sweets she prepared. Riafel happily explains that she made lemon muffins, having heard that Mr. Halbert loves the balanced, refreshing flavor of citrus. After Al's favorite citrus snack is revealed, he stands frozen with a dark, shocked expression while Lady Riafel panics in the background. Watching his unsettlingly still reaction, Lady Riafel desperately hopes she hasn't accidentally offended him with the gift. As a heavy, shocked silence descends over the picnic, she begins to spiral into a full-blown internal crisis over whether Al is actually allergic to citrus. Overcome with guilt, she immediately blurts out an apology for her thoughtless mistake. Al's eye twitches as he processes the situation, while Riafel continues to berate herself for not asking Tia to make a different flavor. When she mentions Tia made them, Al finally breaks his silence to clarify the identity of the baker. Riafel explains that Tia looks up to Mr. Halbert like an older brother and went to great lengths to prepare a gift for him. Softening at the news, Al's cold facade melts as he realizes the effort and affection Tia put into the snack. He breaks into a genuine, radiant smile that leaves Riafel relieved to see his usual self return. With the tension resolved, Al cheerfully asks if he can have another one later, restoring the light-hearted mood. The pair enjoys a peaceful picnic under the bright sun, sharing the treats in a moment of quiet companionship. As night falls, Riafel gently tends to the horses in the stable, vowing to do her best again the next day. Standing before a grand estate, Al checks on Riafel's well-being, but she insists she is doing perfectly fine. Count Notre greets the visitors at his home, expressing his sincere gratitude to Lady Riafel and Sir Alex for coming. Riafel looks on with a soft expression as she prepares to reunite with the Countess. The Countess Notre appears in much better spirits, enthusiastically welcoming Lady Riafel with open arms. Smiling warmly, the Countess reveals she has even begun tending to her garden again as her health improves daily. Count Notre credits Sir Alex for arranging regular visits from the gathering of serpents, pharmacists to ensure her recovery. With a look of profound relief, the Count confirms that there is finally nothing left for them to worry about. He notes that Al has even been personally assisting in the Countess's care during her convalescence. Grasping Riafel's hands, the Count tearfully thanks them both for bringing the smile back to his wife's face. Riafel's eyes shimmer with emotion as she reflects on the journey and the lives they have touched. She realizes that she never could have achieved this success alone and is deeply grateful for everyone who stood by her. Overwhelmed by the positive outcome, she covers her face and weeps tears of pure joy. The Notres pull her into a comforting embrace, expressing their immense relief that she is safe. After the emotional reunion, the Count pivots to a serious tone, stating there is an urgent matter he wishes to discuss. He suggests that Katerina take a moment to rest while the rest of them move inside to talk. The Countess mentions she has prepared tea and sweets for them, which Riafel eagerly looks forward to. Once settled, a concerned Riefel asks the Count if the rumors regarding a certain item are actually true. The Count sets a box down and confirms that the necklace inside is indeed the one he gave to Lord Leol as payment for an antidote. He questions how such a valuable heirloom could have possibly ended up abandoned in a faraway forest. He sighs heavily, noting that the precious sapphire was found in a damaged and filthy state. The Count emphasizes that the necklace was a sacred family heirloom passed down through the Not-Rei lineage for generations. He suggests that while the spirits likely moved it to the forest, they were not the ones who originally damaged it. With a heavy heart, Riefel admits that the person responsible for damaging the heirloom was likely her own sister, Rouge. The Count acknowledges the painful reality that Riefel's former fiancé, Lord Leol, is now engaged to her sister. His expression turns stern as he prepares to voice a definitive judgment on the matter. With eyes burning with resolve, Count Not-Rei declares that he will never forgive Lord Leol or Lady Rouge for their actions. Riefel solemnly agrees, stating that she shares the exact same sentiment as the Count regarding their betrayal. It is revealed that the antidote Leol provided was made of common ingredients that were incredibly easy to obtain. Riefel clenches her skirt in anger, realizing Leol lied about the medicine's rarity just to extort a family heirloom. She condemns the duo for heartlessly trampling on the sincere feelings and trust of the Not-Rei family. Looking forward with fierce intensity, she labels their manipulative behavior as absolutely unforgivable. Riefel bows her head, taking personal responsibility for failing to properly guide her sister. She offers a true and deep apology to the Count for the pain her family has caused. The Count immediately stops her, insisting that she has no reason to apologize for the faults of Leol and Rouge. He reminds her that she is the one who traveled all this way specifically to return the precious heirloom to them. The Count smiles kindly at her, encouraging Lady Riefel to hold her head high with pride. Riefel is taken aback by his kindness, finding her resolve renewed by his supportive words. The Count concludes that the ordeal wasn't entirely bad, as it provided the absolute certainty that Lord Leol is a man utterly unworthy of salvation. Holding a document firmly, Count Not-Rei explains that he originally planned to request the return of the necklace while observing the target's reaction. He questions if a quick resolution is still desired, looking for confirmation that the current approach is acceptable. Count Not-Rei presents the official contract detailing the terms of the necklace's transfer. The scroll serves as legal proof that the jewelry currently remains under the ownership of Lord Leol. Riefel realizes that if they reveal how they actually found the necklace, Lord Leol will likely feign victimhood and claim it was stolen by robbers. To force a confession, they decide to act as if they know nothing, allowing Lord Leol to spend more time agonizing over the situation. Count Not-Rei admits this was his original plan, but his expression shifts as a new idea takes hold. The Count remains silent, his sharp gaze fixed ahead as he prepares to pivot his strategy. Riefel looks on with a confused smile, completely puzzled by the sudden change in the atmosphere. With a stern look, Count Not-Rei declares that the arrival of his guests has given him a reason to make the matter public immediately. Turning his attention to his subordinates, the Count calls upon his young pharmacists to prepare for action. He directly asks Riefel and her companion if they will lend their strength to his upcoming scheme. The group shouts their enthusiastic agreement as the scene shifts to the exterior of a grand, rain-slicked estate. Count Not-Rei orders everyone to head to Lord Leol's estate immediately to settle the matter once and for all. Riefel prepares herself for the confrontation, repeating the directive to head to the mansion. Determined to end the conflict, Riefel's expression hardens as they arrive at the target's home. Riefel ends up accompanying Count Not-Rei in her capacity as the one who originally discovered the missing necklace. Count Not-Rei enters the room, offering a dry apology for the lateness of the hour. The sudden intrusion startles the occupants of the room as the party makes their presence known. Riefel is stunned to find an unexpected assembly of high-ranking nobles already gathered at the estate. It becomes clear that the Duke called this assembly because Lord Leol's situation has become a serious matter among the nobility. Count Not-Rei lets out a curious hum, his eyes narrowing as he processes the unexpected crowd. Someone in the crowd whispers the Count's name in surprise, wondering why he has appeared. Lord Leol is horrified by the state of his garden, which has been completely ruined by his frantic searching. He laments the destruction, noting that his mansion's garden was once home to many treasures. Observing the wreckage, others remark that the garden is even more ruined than rumored and wonder if such desperation was necessary. A sudden scream echoes through the dark foliage as a figure is discovered hiding in the bushes. The Duke stands tall and imposing, finally confronting the cowering Lord Leol among the ruined plants. On behalf of the assembly, a formal order is issued for Lord Leol to return Count Notre's necklace immediately. Lord Leol can only let out a weak groan, trapped by the presence of the high-ranking officials. He attempts to deflect by accusing them of having no decency for entering his mansion without permission at midnight. Count Notre laughs off the accusation, mockingly apologizing for the improper timing of their visit. The Count's expression turns cold and predatory as he prepares to deliver a verbal counterstrike. He points out that if they are discussing impropriety, Lord Leol should look at his own behavior. The Count berates Leol for forcing his servants to work through the night without a single moment of rest. He concludes that neither of them possesses common sense, effectively silencing Leol's attempt at a moral high ground. Riafel watches the exchange with a pained expression, her eyes reflecting deep concern for the people caught in the crossfire. She is horrified to see that the servants are covered in injuries, describing the sight as truly terrible. Searching for a way to help, she asks if Lord Leol's pharmacy has medicine in stock that they can use. Riafel's companion agrees to go with her to help the suffering staff, ignoring the ongoing political battle. Lord Leol panics, shouting that it is insane for Count Notre and the dukes to demand the necklace at this hour. He turns to Riafel, desperately appealing to her strong sense of justice. Leol tries to manipulate her, claiming she surely came to save him from Count Notre's supposed tyranny. Riafel clenches her fist in anger, flatly telling Lord Leol that he is the one who is actually insane. She declares her deep disappointment, stating that making servants work to the point of collapse is unacceptable regardless of the circumstances. Lord Leol calls out to her in desperation as she turns her back on him in disgust. Riafel recoils in shock as Leol suddenly reaches out and grabs her. She demands that he let her go, while he insists that she is completely misunderstanding his motives. Lord Leol begs her to listen to his side, claiming she will only understand his despair if she hears him out. He continues his desperate plea, suggesting that a kind and wise person like her should be able to empathize with his plight. An injured man pants heavily as a pharmacist firmly orders the antagonist to stop harassing Lady Riafel for assistance. Al towers over the scene, coldly reminding the survivors that as pharmacists, their priority lies with the people truly in need right now. With a chilling gaze, Al makes it clear that the antagonist is not among those they intend to save while a guard nearby prepares a rope. Riafel stammers in shock at Al's uncharacteristic intensity before he gently takes her hand to lead her away from the chaos. The duo walks past the defeated Lord Leol, who sits bound and broken on the ground while the guards maintain their watch. A guard's heavy boots crunch on the dry earth as he mockingly informs the captive that his last hope has officially vanished. The guard looms over the prisoner, sadistically suggesting they continue their conversation with far more thoroughness than before. Leol trembles in terror, his eyes wide and sweating, as a mysterious figure leans in close to whisper a taunting greeting. Riafel and Al walk through the lush garden path together, the silence between them filled with the weight of recent events. Al softly asks Riafel if his grip was too tight, only for her to respond that his presence feels incredibly reassuring. Riafel admires Al's capable hands and asks if it is okay for them to continue holding on to each other like this. Al smiles tenderly, closing his eyes in content as he suggests they stay in this intimate moment for just a little longer. Though she appreciates his kindness, Riafel gazes at the gentle Al. She knows and senses a subtle, lingering darkness beneath his smile. Riafel focuses on her inventory, noting that while many medicines were taken for investigation, much of the stock remains miraculously intact. She sifts through essential supplies like water magic stones and bandages, preparing herself for the task of treating the wounded. Riafel is surprised to find a large cache of fresh herbs in an abandoned shop, questioning how such a surplus is possible. Al reveals that he had been secretly replenishing the immediate-use herbs just in case, prompting Riafel to marvel at his thoroughness. Filled with gratitude, Riafel thanks him for his foresight and urges them to hurry back to the garden to begin treatments. The pair makes their way back through the estate, Al carrying heavy buckets of water while Riafel carries the medical supplies. Riafel begins her work, combining pure water from magic stones with the potent juice of matrazira grass to create a remedy. She reflects on how matrazira grass provides vital pain relief and prevents infection, making it the perfect choice for first aid. While simple wound medicine is usually sufficient, Riafel contemplates the need for a more specialized approach for the current situation. Riafel draws a sharp blade, her eyes narrowing with intense focus as she prepares to extract raw sap from a medicinal plant. With precise movements, She slices into the stalk and watches as the thick, healing liquid begins to flow for her preparations. She considers the suraju plant, noting that while its raw sap is rarely used directly, her intuition guides her to use it for fatigue recovery. Riafel works diligently in the pharmacy, gathering every necessary ingredient to ensure the staff receives the best possible care. Kneeling over a large supply bag, Riafel determines that she finally has enough material to treat everyone in the garden. A faint, glowing tree spirit appears before her, its mystical presence suggesting a deeper connection to the natural world. Riafel kneels before her shelves, her silhouette framed by the pharmacy's organized jars as she follows the spirit's guidance. Guided by the tree spirits, Riafel meticulously combines her ingredients, confident that this mixture is their best hope. With a determined grip on the bucket handle, she finishes the preparation and readies herself to face the injured crowd. Standing beside Al, Riafel raises her voice to the garden, calling for everyone to line up for their wound treatments. A group of weary maids and an elderly butler stand in the shadows, their faces etched with exhaustion and trauma. Riafel and Al work tirelessly among the various servants, bandaging limbs and offering comfort throughout the dark garden. Riafel calls for the next person and suddenly realizes that the woman before her hasn't rested for a significantly long time. Riafel stares intently at the servant, her eyes widening as she recognizes the face of someone who was once quite cruel to her. She notes the deep signs of prolonged fatigue on the woman, realizing the toll the recent days have taken on the entire household. The maid trembles and looks away, hesitantly asking if Lady Riafel even remembers who she is after all this time. The maid stands in silence, the memory of her past transgressions and the harsh words she once spoke hanging heavy in the air. Riafel closes her eyes for a moment, processing the complicated history between her and the woman she is now tasked with healing. A flashback reveals the maid once shamed Riafel for her focus on the pharmacy, telling her to feel sorry for Lord Aaron. In the memory, the woman harshly demanded that Riafel stop acting like a pharmacist and start behaving like a proper young lady. Back in the present, Riafel smiles gently and tells the stunned maid that she remembers her well because they met every single day. The maid is moved to tears, frantically questioning why Riafel would ever choose to help someone who treated her so poorly. Sobbing with regret, the woman admits that the things she said to Riafel in the past were absolutely terrible. Riafel looks at her with pure kindness, stating that whatever was said in the past is no reason to deny her help now. Riafel gazes at the woman with a soft, forgiving expression that completely disarms the maid's long-held guilt and hostility. As a fellow woman, Riafel admits she hates to see such beautiful hands get hurt and insists on treating the injuries. Riafel promises that the pain will subside soon as she carefully prepares to wrap the woman's hands in clean bandages. With tender and expert care, the pharmacist wraps the maid's wrist, offering a physical manifestation of her forgiveness through healing. Gazing out at the clearing sky, Riafel notes the rain has finally ceased while questioning if the storm is truly over. A lingering sense of tension remains in the air as the scene shifts toward the aftermath of the recent confrontation. Riafel urgently tends to a wounded maid, offering medicine and reassurance that the sting of the injury will not last long. The maid tearfully laments her own foolishness, overwhelmed by the kindness shown despite the dismissal of others. Overcome by emotion, the servant breaks down completely, losing all composure as her suppressed feelings finally overflow. A silent, somber moment passes as the weight of the situation settles over the characters present. Riafel strictly commands the maid to focus on healing her wounds so she may return to her duties with proper resolve. Grasping Riafel's hands, the maid offers a tearful, profound apology for all of her past actions and transgressions. A calm presence approaches from the side, signaling a shift in the immediate focus toward the larger group. Suggesting a return to the mansion, the man expresses concern for the Duke's condition while Riafel inquires about the remaining treatments. Confident in his team, he explains that the others are more than capable of handling the remaining tasks for the time being. In the background, various attendants and workers begin the process of tidying up the area and managing supplies. The hooded subordinates signal their success and readiness to proceed with the next phase of the operation. Riafel's expression brightens with a look of pure wonder and renewed determination. As they arrive at the room, a guard stands at attention while the group is welcomed back from their hard work. Stepping forward with poise, Riafel formally announces her entrance as she prepares to face the assembly. A sudden, sharp realization strikes one of the onlookers as the atmosphere in the room shifts. Confronted with her lack of pharmacological knowledge, Riafel is questioned on why she chose to involve herself in such specialized work. While Lord Liol is mocked for his unearned fame, a noble reflects on how this ordeal has forced a rethink of their spiritual beliefs. The air grows cold as a direct and stinging rebuke is leveled against Lord Liol for his shameful behavior. He is ruthlessly exposed for unilaterally breaking his engagement and profiting from the recipes Riafel developed without her consent. The verbal assault continues as he is declared utterly unfit as a man and even less so as a member of the nobility. Surrounded by palpable fury, the group notes that the level of anger in the room is entirely natural given the circumstances. The nobles explain that his harmful recipe incident has severely damaged their reputation and incited direct complaints from the commoners. A temporary reprieve is granted as the speaker suggests they cease the scolding of Lord Liol for the moment. The focus shifts toward a more pressing matter, the mystery surrounding the missing necklace. Lord Liol sits in stunned, fearful silence as the powerful figures before him prepare to deliver their verdict. The room falls quiet as all eyes turn toward the disgraced Lord Liol to hear his final defense. It is revealed that support for the Pharmacist was contingent on the return of Count Notre's necklace. Because of his failures and delays, the authorities officially declare the previous discussion regarding support to be void. Panic-stricken, Liol frantically insists he intended to return the item and begs to know why the deal is being retracted. The interrogator demands to know exactly how many days have passed since the letter of demand first arrived. Ignoring his excuses, the order is given to bring Lady Rouge to the room immediately to settle the matter. As Liol trembles in disbelief, a voice mocks the idea of waking his fiancée at such a late hour. The observers note that Liol has been cornered to the point where he must finally admit the necklace is lost. Doubts arise as the group realizes it is highly suspicious that Lady Rouge hasn't stirred despite the loud commotion. The tension reaches a breaking point as the characters brace for a shocking discovery. A sudden, violent realization or event causes the characters to recoil in absolute shock and alarm.